Okay. All right, our regularly scheduled meeting of June 21st is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman? Here. Councilmember Cernanik?
Present.
Councilmember Cole? Here. Councilmember Stallman?
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo? And Councilmember Taylor.
Would you all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is approved as submitted. We have a proclamation for Pool Safety Day. Chief, you want to bring down the dive team? And it's pretty appropriate because we've been seeing some stuff on the news stations about kids and outdoor above-ground pools. So this is a proclamation of the City of Littleton, Colorado, proclaiming Friday, June 24th, 2011 as Pool Safety Day 2011 in the City of Colorado. Whereas in the United States, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission estimates that nearly 300 children younger than 5 drowned in swimming pools and spas each year, and more than 3,200 that age go to the hospital emergency rooms due to non-fatal submersion injuries. And whereas an unknown number of those hospitalizations result in permanent disability, including brain damage, and whereas these deaths and injuries are preventable, and whereas the Consumer Product Safety Commission is charged with enforcing the Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act to reduce child drowning and near drowning and entrapments in swimming pools and spas, and whereas public participation in the campaign can help spread the campaign's message to parents and families and help prevent future tragedies, and whereas the City of Littleton supports the Consumer Product Safety Commission's pool safety campaign. Now, therefore, I, Doug Clark, the Mayor of the City of Littleton, do hereby proclaim that Friday, June 24th, 2011 is designated Pool Safety Day in the City of Littleton, and I urge our fellow citizens to recognize that simple water safety steps should be used year-round in pools, spas, indoor water parks, and aquatic facilities to ensure the safety of everyone. And I am going to sign this, and it already has the city seal. And drownings really are one of those types of injuries and deaths that are preventable and very unfortunate. So thank you, dive team.
Mayor, could I ask the chief just to come around? We've got these people on TV. Maybe just introduce the team here because these people do volunteer for this.
Great
this
idea.
Is extra duty for the chief. Could you come to the mic and just introduce, and also our supervisory team here, and just for the people in the audience and then the people on TV, just to get to know our troops a little bit better.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, for that proclamation. This was a result of an effort by Captain Tim Woodward, who could not be here with us tonight, but actually is on the National Drowning Prevention Association. He's our representative for that, and has led this dive team for a number of years successfully. With us is Captain Steve Alley. Steve Alley is one of our big-time instructors for scuba. Also, we have Captain Mike Voss, Engineer Tiffany Logmeyer. Thank you very much, Tiffany. I've only known you for 20 years. And Josh Menendez, thank you, Josh, for being here. Also have Battalion Chief Jeff Tasker and Division Chief of Operations Roland Sino. These are just a portion of the terrific team that we have put together and has a result of their training, their dedication has made our community safer.
Thanks, guys.
All right, minutes from the May 24th meeting. Additions, corrections, deletions. Then those minutes are approved as submitted. Changes, corrections, additions from the June 7th minutes.
I have two, but I need your help on one of them.
Okay?
Line 11 and following, the regular, 10 actually, the regular meeting convened at 5:30 p.m., and then we have a motion that needs to get inserted, and I didn't know who made the motion and who seconded it.
Good point. And you know what? Let's change that. I've got it written down when I find it here, and I'll get it to you, because we convened the meeting and then went into executive session and then came back to resume the meeting at 7 o'clock. And I have who made the
Okay, so-
motion. I just need to find it here.
So it would be whoever it is moved and whoever it is seconded to convene in the city manager's conference room, convene an executive session in the city manager's conference room, preceding the regular meeting, et cetera, et cetera.
And that was Phil that made the motion and Deb that seconded it. Okay, any other changes?
Oops, I'm sorry. Page 5, line 145 and 6, well, 145, there'll be some words inserted. Councilmember Cole said she had asked, insert City Attorney Steyert for guidance to the process of adding a property to a historic district.
Any other changes?
No, thank you.
Then those minutes are approved with those changes. Introduction of new employees.
All right, yes, Council, I do have a couple of people, actually 3 to introduce to you tonight. And when I call, I'll just tell a little bit about you. When I call your names, you can stand up, please. Zach Rainier. Zach, if you'll stand. Zach is a new entry-level police officer with us. He's a Colorado native. He's lived in Littleton most of his life, but he's just recently served, was with the Summit County Sheriff's Department, and now is moving back and joining Littleton Police Department. And then Brian, in your agenda, it's actually Brian Govey with a G, Brian. Brian's a new entry-level police officer. He was born in California. Brian's a military veteran. Brian, I didn't ask you what branch. In the Navy, so he served our country, moved to Colorado in 2005, and has some law enforcement experience with Denver Sheriff, and he's now joining us. Both of these young men, I'm told, are engaged, so they'll have people to keep them in line, and that'll be a positive thing. And then thirdly, we have an intern with the city attorney's office, Marissa Johnson. Marissa, if you'll stand. Marissa is a Littleton girl, grew up in the Stern Park neighborhood, and she's currently in law school in Minnesota, but she's home for the summer, and she's doing some intern work for Suzanne, and I understand she's been doing quite a bit of research on one of our councilmen, your youth initiative, the youth initiative that you were interested in. So I don't know what else she's doing for us. But anyway, we're happy to have Marissa with us for the summer. So happy to introduce these people to you.
Thank you for coming. Welcome to the city of Littleton. You don't have to stay for the meeting, but you're welcome to, if you want. All right. That brings us to scheduled public appearance, a report from CH2M Hill. If the council will recall, we met with the city of Englewood, I believe last December, talk about the ultraviolet disinfection system, and then met again first part of this year. Council decided that they wanted to get a second opinion on the effectiveness of the chlorine-based disinfection system currently in place at the Bi-City treatment plant. We put out a request for proposal. Was it 3 firms that submitted? 2 firms that submitted. Council selected Bruce and myself as the committee to interface with this. We checked the resume, selected CH2M Hill. They actually had very glowing references, and issued a statement of work, which was part of the request for proposal. CH2M Hill did an analysis of the chlorine-based disinfection system and is presenting the report to council tonight. Charlie, anything you want to add?
Paul and Larry will make the presentation. This is
Yeah.
a copy of the slideshow.
Thanks.
Is this what you had sent us, Charlie, or you sent us a draft? Is this,
This is not a draft anymore.
no, but I mean, is it mighty close to that?
Yeah, very, very minor modifications, Councilwoman Cole.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Paul, do you want to just introduce yourself for the team and for the television audience?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, Councilmen, Councilwomen. I'm Paul Swain with CH2M Hill from our local office here in the Denver area. I'm Vice President and Senior Principal Technologist in Disinfection and Water Treatment. I'm joined by Larry Schimler here with me, who will be speaking here in a moment. Larry is also a Principal Technologist, and he is our Global Technology Leader for water reuse, based also in our local office. So it's our pleasure to be here. We have about a 20-slide presentation. I understand in some of the handouts they're upside down on one side of the page compared to the other, so please, we apologize for that. Hopefully you can flip it over and see
Probably
where we are.
because Charlie made the copies.
Actually, we did, so Charlie's
okay.
clean on that. All right, so just a little bit of background as to why we're here. We were, as the mayor gave a good introduction, there was previous work done by others, another engineering firm. Oh, sorry, thank you. All right, thanks, Charlie. That'll help a little bit. There we go. All right, so we were following up on engineering.
No, it's not on.
One more thing.
Hang on a second. We've got to, so that they don't have to crane their necks.
This is our technical crew doing their work.
A different technologist. It might be okay because we've got the handouts.
We'll look behind us.
Yeah, Wendy,
We have to have a
we've got the handouts.
little more higher tech technology here. She switched ballpoints.
It's okay. Wendy.
Don't worry
We'll
about
just-
it.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll look.
Yeah.
They can follow along or crane their necks.
Just
Sorry,
make sure we
Paul.
go dink at the right time.
All right, we broke the lamp in your projector in your conference room last time we were here, so we've got a good track record.
You're on a roll.
Yeah. All right, so let's get started. Previous engineering work evaluated your existing disinfection system and looked at different methods of disinfection to comply with future ammonia limits. The previous finding was that the existing system cannot be expected to consistently meet the permit limitations based on newly adopted discharge limits for the Littleton Inglewood wastewater treatment plant. And that work identified UV disinfection as a selected alternative to move forward with. And then an ammonia compliance schedule was approved by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and included in the plant's discharge permit to take effect in 2014. Previous work had a number of reasons for recommending UV disinfection, including concerns with the current approach, which uses chlorine for disinfection. Those included low ammonia concentrations in the treated water from the wastewater treatment plant that complicate the chemistry of disinfection. We'll talk briefly about that. Difficulties with controlling the disinfection process, the reliance on online analyzers which measure the ammonia concentration in the wastewater, and those are necessary to get the chlorine disinfection approach to work effectively. Those have been difficult to calibrate and sometimes inaccurate. And some of the options available included the need to add ammonia to the wastewater to form the desired disinfectant, and ammonia is exactly what you're trying to remove from the plant. So we'll talk a bit more about that. So we came on, as the mayor gave us the introduction, to reevaluate the feasibility of chlorine disinfection options. That's the approach that is currently used at the plant. This slide kind of sets some of the background. Why is ammonia important for disinfection at your wastewater treatment plant? Ammonia is present in wastewater, and it needs to be removed to meet discharge limits before the water is discharged to the South Platte River. For disinfection, we need it to be present at enough of a concentration to get the right disinfectant that we want. So this graph on the lower right-hand side has a whole lot of information on it. The point that I wanted to make is there's a desired ratio of chlorine to ammonia. That ratio is right about 4:1 or so. This is showing the chlorine concentration and the chlorine to ammonia ratio. You want that ratio to be right in here for good, stable disinfection. So you need to control the amount of ammonia and the amount of chlorine. If you add too much chlorine and get that chlorine to ammonia ratio higher, you run into real trouble. You start to lose your chlorine residual, you have an ineffective disinfectant, and you have a period of instability. And beyond that, then if you continue to add chlorine, you get to what's called breakpoint chlorination. You remove all the ammonia and you establish a chlorine residual. So that's one of the more intricate chemistry elements of this, but the point is there's a desired ratio of chlorine to ammonia, and you need some ammonia there for good disinfection. Your disinfectant is what's called chloramine, and there are competing objectives for this plant to achieve. It needs to remove ammonia and then have enough to get that right ratio and get good disinfection. So in our evaluation of chlorine disinfection options, we looked at a couple of options that had been looked at before, and we looked at one new option, and I'll briefly summarize those, and then I'm going to turn it over to Larry. We looked at this concept of breakpoint chlorination, which requires very high chlorine doses, and because of that high chemical dose, has very high costs. We don't recommend that, neither did the previous consultant. We don't feel that's an option worth pursuing due to the high cost and additional infrastructure to complete it. There's a second option, which is essentially what you're doing right now, and that's what Larry's going to talk about. And then a third option we looked at, or that was looked at previously, was to use monochloramine disinfection by adding ammonia to the water. We see that as having no benefits compared to what you're doing now. We looked at a fourth option that will show up on some of the summary tables that we get to at the end of the presentation, called preformed monochloramine. We're not going to get into detail on that. That's kind of a new option that we looked at that we'll summarize at the end along with the rest of the information. So at this point, I'm going to ask Larry to come up and walk us through the current approach.
Okay, thanks, Paul. As Paul mentioned, I'm going to be going through the difficulties with the current operation that you're currently using for disinfection, and then talk about how the system is meeting the future regulatory limits. So if I can bring your attention to the bottom of the slide here, it's showing basically a process flow diagram of the existing wastewater treatment plant. These are the major unit operations out there. So what the plant currently is doing is, you can see this dashed line here, it's bypassing a certain amount of flow around the ammonia removal process. These nitrifying trickling filters remove ammonia from the process and reduce it to very low levels. So it's taking some ammonia, some fairly concentrated ammonia from the water, and bypassing it and blending it back in downstream of those processes, just upstream of the disinfection process. So at that point is where the ammonia mixes with the chlorine and provides disinfection in the chlorine contact tank. So that's the existing system. It's called the NTF bypass approach. Now, it's a good process. It's a relatively cheap way of providing ammonia downstream rather than using an external source of ammonia. There's some plant operations that would be present at any wastewater plant that are going to complicate this process, however. And I've listed them here, and I'll go through that in a couple slides. But the point I want to bring up right now is what these items do is they cause ammonia variability in concentration just prior to the disinfection process. And that causes significant control problems that I'll be reviewing. So here's a graph, and we'll be going through a couple graphs. This is showing how the ammonia varies significantly through the wastewater plant. The blue line here is basically the ammonia going to the chlorine contact tank, and it's plotted on the left axis here. You can see the concentration varies from about 0.5 milligrams per liter up to about 4.5. And this Time scale is about 8 days. So we focused in on a period of 8 days in early January of this year. And you can see it increases rapidly and decreases rapidly at various points in the time, which makes controllability difficult due to that rapid change. Part of the reason that's happening is this red line, which is what's coming into the wastewater plant. And those ammonia concentrations vary from typically 10 to 25 milligrams per liter. And you can see they change rapidly as well. So we have significant ammonia variations occurring that cause control problems. So going to the next slide, these ammonia variations can significantly impact the control of the disinfection process. So this green line is basically what you were just looking at before. It's the ammonia concentration going into the chlorine contact tank. Now, the control algorithm that the plant uses in their computer system tries to maintain this ammonia concentration at about 2 milligrams per liter. And once again, this time scale is about 8 days on the bottom. And you can see this green line, it's not constantly maintained at 2 milligrams per liter. It's bumping up and down rapidly and frequently. So you can see it varying from 2 milligrams per liter up to 5 milligrams per liter. And that's partly due to this control algorithm. The blue line is how much water is going through that bypass flow. So you can see that bypass flow, at times it's 3 MGD, and then when the ammonia is low, that bypass flow is cut off and it goes down to 0. So you're not bypassing any ammonia, so you're not adding any ammonia to the tail end of the plant, and then the ammonia concentration goes down and it tries to reach that 2 milligram per liter limit again. So it's bouncing up and forth here. So it's not really well controlled currently. So what is this, the causes of this, the ammonia variation? Basically, we've talked about the typical diurnal ammonia variations. That's the natural changes into the plant that causes these changes at the tail end of the plant. There's also what's called the denitrification, filter bumping, and backwashing. That's the second bullet here. On this flow diagram, you can see these denite filters. They periodically require backwashing to remove accumulated solids and biogrowth. And that steals water basically from the downstream process and affects the ammonia concentration significantly. So it rapidly changes the ammonia concentration. You also have centrate pumping. You can see right at the head of the plant, this what's called centrate return. Centrate is a liquid waste product from your dewatering centrifuge process. So it's a highly concentrated ammonia stream coming into the head of the plant. It's about 1,500 milligrams per liter. So when that's pumped into the plant, it really increases the ammonia concentration going through the plant. And that's typically done just during the night hours, which can cause some problems. And then finally, what we were talking about just in the previous slide is this NTF bypass control algorithm. It's overreacting to certain ammonia changes, and it doesn't predict flow changes from those denite filter backwash events. So that control algorithm could be adjusted for better control. So the real question here is how does this existing disinfection process meet the future regulations? So I'm going to go through the ammonia future regulations and then the disinfection future regulations. This slide is showing the 30-day effluent ammonia concentration. The red is the future ammonia limit. And you can see this time scale here is about 2.5 years. The most stringent would be around August, September. And you can see it's about 4 milligrams per liter on this red line. And that's for the 34 million gallon per day effluent flow. The blue line is what you've achieved at the plant over the past 2.5 years. And it's a 30-day effluent ammonia concentration. You can see it peaked at 2.5 milligrams per liter, which is well below the future regulatory requirement. So you're 1.5 milligrams per liter below the regulatory requirement over the past 2.5 years. So you've met that requirement. The most restrictive future ammonia limit would be 3.2 milligrams per liter if your flow actually increased to 50 MGD. I mean, still you'd be below that. 3.2, you'd be 0.7 milligrams per liter below that. So you've complied with the future ammonia requirements over the past 2.5 years. You've probably heard of, maybe if you recall in the last presentation, that there's been periodic inhibition events that are problematic. So you get some inhibition into the system from your wastewater collection system that inhibits the nitrification process and your ammonia goes up. Those do not really affect the disinfection process and shouldn't weigh into the decision whether you do UV or chlorine. They just are going to potentially impact the ammonia, but that's a separate issue entirely. So that was the ammonia. This slide is showing the E. coli compliance with future regulations using the current approach once again. So on this graph, we're looking at the blue little circles here are the daily data for E. coli that's been collected over the past 2.5 years. The red line is the future 7-day geometric mean limit of 252. The green line is the future 30-day limit of 126. And then the red and green dots are the calculated values that you've achieved over the past 2.5 years. And you can see you've been in compliance over the entire 2.5 years. So that green, those green dots have always been below the green line, and the red dots have always been below the red line. You did have a problem occur in the summer of 2010, which I just want to explain what we think happened during that time and how you might have been able to address that. So this is the last graph, I promise. It's kind of complicated. But the green line is showing the E. coli during this the summer. So it's showing May of 2010. So you can see about on May 19th, May 20th, it spiked up to 900. And then again on May 27th, May 28th, it spiked up above 800. So what caused this? These purple crosses here are showing the ammonia analyzer going into the chlorine contact tank. And if you recall, the plant is trying to maintain this at 2 milligrams per liter, concentration of 2 milligrams per liter. You can see this concentration, as recorded by the ammonia analyzers, went up to 3 milligrams per liter. So the system thinks, oh, we have plenty of ammonia, we don't need any more, so it shuts off that NTF bypass down to 0. So we're not adding any ammonia through that NTF bypass. However, what was really happening, these red dots show what the lab measured during those times. So the lab takes a sample and then does an analysis on it. And that data is not immediately available. It's probably a day or two later. But you can see that the concentration actually was about 0.8 milligrams per liter. Normally, these line up fairly accurately between the red dots and the purple crosses. But during this time, the ammonia analyzers, we believe, were reading incorrectly. So they're thinking there's a lot of ammonia available going into the chlorine contact tank, but in fact, there wasn't very much. So what happens is you get the wrong type of chlorine species forming. It's what Paul just talked about prior, and it's not effective in disinfection. So that's why we believe this E. coli spiked up and the disinfection performance was not performing well.
But it was still meeting the permit.
It was still meeting the permit. And you can probably address this by modifications to the control algorithm system. So, summary of the current approach. So the objectives of the current approach is compliance with the ammonia limit, meeting the disinfection limit, and dechlorination. And the operators have done an excellent job of achieving a compliance with a complicated system, as you can see, and numerous variables that are affecting the performance of the disinfection system. Potential improvements to the current approach, control improvements, which we hit on just briefly there, and that would include dampening of the bypass flow, so you could level out that bypass flow and not get those big jumps up and down. You could also replace the pump on that bypass that would allow it to pump to a lower flow. Right now it's limited to 1 MGD. If you're able to go lower, it'd be a better controlled system. You could provide an offline denitrification backwash supply system that would limit the amount of flow variations. You could do a continuous centrate return. If you recall, that centrate could have a significant impact on the ammonia, so if you just bled that into the system over the entire day, you'd have less of an impact. And then the flow meter into the chlorine contact tank has been reported to have not the best accuracy, so replacement of that might be of interest. But it's not possible to address all the current issues. The analyzer accuracy, the system depends on that, and there's some issues with that, as you saw. The plant does do regular maintenance on that, but still there's going to be potentially some reporting problems on that. And then the diurnal ammonia variations into the plant. Those are both going to be issues that you really can't address. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Paul.
All right, thanks, Larry. So hopefully Larry established why, depending on the circles you travel in, we're either affectionately or derogatorily known as water and wastewater nerds. But let me try to wrap up what Larry walked through. He's shown us the existing system, a couple of conclusions. We're trying to comply with 3 limits through the disinfection system. One of them is ammonia, or that figure into the disinfection system. One's ammonia. The second is the E. coli limit that Larry talked about. And the third is the need to dechlorinate. So you add chlorine, you have to take it back out to meet discharge limits. Conclusions about the existing approach, compliance with the new permit ammonia limits with the current control strategy has occurred consistently. We showed you a 3-year data plot, nonstop compliance with the future permit limits for ammonia. In 2014, when that ammonia limit takes effect, there will be a change to what they call the indicator organism for the levels of bacteria in the plant discharge. That's going to change to E. coli. It's a more sensitive organism, and Larry showed the graphs of how the current control approach is complicated, and there were some events where disinfection performance wasn't as good as it had been most of the time, and those events could continue to still occur. So we're going to talk about kind of bringing that all together for your consideration and ultimately decision making. On the table previously is the UV disinfection option as an alternative disinfectant for the plant to use. That's a proven approach. It's an effective disinfectant. It's widely used in the wastewater industry. Its performance, the UV system's performance, is independent of the ammonia concentration in the wastewater. So you can remove all the ammonia through the process flow diagram and the process unit processes that are available that Larry showed, get all that ammonia out and not worry about keeping a little bit there to disinfect with. Using UV would eliminate the need to dechlorinate. You're no longer using chlorine for your main plant flow, so you don't have to remove it again before discharge. So that's how it stacks up on those 3 areas of permit compliance. If you look at the things that might be regulated in the future, those include disinfection byproducts, other pathogens, Giardia, for example. Nitrosamines are an emerging class of disinfection byproducts. There could be more stringent nitrogen limits in the future. UV is going to better position this plant for those future limits that may take effect at some time in the future. We don't know when that could be. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be 20 years. But at some future time, there may be a need to put UV in at your wastewater treatment plant. And it's currently part of the compliance schedule developed with the state of Colorado. UV has a couple of difficulties as well. I want to give you the balanced view. Compared to monochloramine, UV is very sensitive to water quality. So we've got some abbreviations in there. That means the total suspended solids concentration or the UV transmittance of the water. So those are a couple things where if the water quality changes, UV could perform less well than normal. It's very sensitive to the quality of power coming into the wastewater treatment plant. So it could, in effect, go offline for short periods of time due to variations in power quality and then come back up, even with an emergency generator. But if you look at the whole picture, the use of UV disinfection would reduce the risk of noncompliance with your E. coli limit. It would reduce the risk for noncompliance with your ammonia limit because you'd be able to get all of that ammonia out of the flow, and it would completely eliminate the risk of having chlorine present in the wastewater. So of those 3 areas, it would reduce the risk in 2 of them and eliminate the risk in the 3rd. What are other utilities in Colorado doing for wastewater disinfection? There's a table here that shows a number of the larger utilities across the state. Largest is Denver Metro's wastewater treatment plant. They converted from the use of gas chlorine to sodium hypochlorite very recently and are continuing to use chlorine as their disinfectant, as is Fort Collins Utilities' Drake facility. They also converted to sodium hypochlorite and continue to use chlorine. Several of the other facilities, yes, sir?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I guess what I was going to ask when you were done was, in your guys' opinion, some of the changeovers here certainly had to do with standards, but the issue for a lot of these plants had to do with the utilization of chlorine gas, which is a lot more difficult to handle and volatile than what we're using.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, usually there's been an impetus for the shift to UV disinfection because additional costs are required, such as that conversion from gas chlorine to hypochlorite. So there's been a cost driver there to go to UV.
Okay, thanks.
If you look at the rest of the list, there's a number of plants using UV, and I think the trend is probably similar in many different states that the majority of wastewater, or a large number of wastewater treatment plants are in the process of converting to UV. So it's a viable approach. So we want to talk about risk to give you some more information. And I want to make it clear that our assessment of risk that we're going to show you was determined solely from the existing plant data. We looked at a 3-year period since the improvements and expansion of the plant were complete. And we have developed some tables of risk based on that data. It's not a forward-looking calculation. It's an assessment of the data set that's there. Larry talked about the job the operators have done with some difficult controls, and they've done a great job. And the existing data incorporate that human element. You guys are fortunate to have a crew of operators who take pride in what they do. They do their best to avoid permit violations, and that's reflected in the data. There's very few permit violations. When we look at the quantified risks of permit noncompliance, they're going to be very low. Those, again, are based on past data. Things could change in the future. We don't know everything that could change. Nobody does. From the data, though, the probability of compliance with those three areas, the ammonia, the bacterial organism, and the chlorine residual, have all been over 99%. So I'm going to show you that in a little bit more detail. One question that was probably forming in some people's minds is what happens if you don't comply? There's potential financial penalties for accidental noncompliance of about $10,000 per day, up to $10,000 per day. Where there's willful noncompliance, those penalties go up considerably, but I would be sure that, or we would anticipate that would not be the case. And then what level of risk is acceptable? That's an answer that varies with every utility that we work with. No two utilities have the same vision on what is acceptable. Some want absolutely no risk. Some want to minimize risk. Some want to look at the costs of noncompliance. So that's a utility-specific decision, and we'll talk a bit more about that. So here's the assessment of the current data, or the existing data from from 2009 through when we completed this analysis, this data set analysis in April. And we used more stringent criteria, more strict criteria than the actual discharge limits, just to try to quantify those numbers. So we looked at any ammonia level greater than 4, instantaneous single data point greater than 4, and said that was indicative of a problem with compliance. The real limit is based on an annual, or a running average. We looked at any instantaneous measurements of E. coli greater than the maximum level of 252 per 100 milliliters. And again, the actual permit limit will be based on an averaging, so a single point won't get you out of compliance. So again, this is more strict. And then we looked at what we thought, based on discussions with the plant operators. They use what they call ORP, or oxidation reduction potential, to control the process of removing that chlorine. And they think when it gets up to 240, they'll be out of compliance. So we looked at individual data points where that measurement of ORP was above 240. And those are the numbers that go into this table. So in terms of the 3 years or 2.5 years of data, 0.7% of the time the ammonia level exceeded 4 milligrams per liter based on single samples. Again, a more strict limit than the permit, but if you extrapolated that to days, that would mean 1 out of 140 days you would be over 4 milligrams per liter ammonia. Okay? E. coli, same analysis, 0.9%. So 1 in 107 days you'd be over that E. coli level of 252. Dechlorination, there were 14 values out of 20,000. This is very frequent data collection. So that translates to 1 day in 4 years based on that data set that you'd exceed the chlorine residual limit. And that one may be of more concern because that's the one that could translate to discharges in the river and potential fish kills or things like that. So it's an acute issue.
Paul, just a point of clarification. This is something that just to the staff, you might want to just clarify this. My understanding is this is not really a predictive model. This is really under the conservative assumptions that you showed. This is simply a risk probability. It's not actually a predictive model. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely correct, Jim.
Okay.
There's no predictions here. It's based on the data set.
All right.
So
thank you.
Yep, thanks for that clarification. And then as Larry talked about, there's a relatively complex system that's currently being used. He walked through the different variables that contribute to the effectiveness of disinfection and getting that right chlorine to ammonia ratio. Okay, so we've got an extensive table here, but it's looking at different options. The top line, the top row, is the same information from the previous table, except that we've added a column second to the right called safety issues. The current approach uses liquid chlorine. That's not something you want to spill on yourself. It has to get transported and delivered into the storage tanks at the plant. So we said that that was a medium safety issue because you're handling a chemical there. Modifying the current approach, Larry talked about some of the fixes that could be done to make it better. You would slightly reduce your risk of ammonia permit noncompliance because you'd better control the ammonia levels, so it'd help you out there. You'd help yourself on E. coli compliance, again through better controls, more accurate controls. Be no change in dechlorination, no change in the safety of the process, and no change or maybe slightly better complexity due to those improvements. I'm going to skip the preform monochloramine. That's an option that we looked at that is lower cost than UV and has some benefits, but it's not been adopted in the state of Colorado yet. We've implemented it elsewhere. So I'm going to skip over that to UV. UV has the lowest risk of not complying with the ammonia limit because you can remove all of the ammonia that you possibly can. It's a lower risk of noncompliance with E. coli because it's a very effective disinfectant, and you're again not relying on these analyzers and concepts that Larry discussed. And then, like I said previously, it eliminates the risk of a chlorine violation because you no longer need to dechlorinate. You don't have chlorine at the same volumes and quantities as now, so it's a lower risk for safety, and it's a less complex system. So those are the improvements and part of the reason that UV has been discussed and recommended previously. The cost, what do things cost? So we have 3 entries in the table. The first one is the current approach with modifications, and we had a kind of a laundry list of things that you could do to improve the current system. You would not have to do all of those. So the $1.2 million there is a conservative number. You could pick and choose which ones you did and prioritize those and probably spend less than that. Current O&M costs, excluding labor, we feel it's hard to directly compare the amount of operator time. Operating costs are about $116,000 or $118,000 per year. You can see this. Yes, sir.
Just, Paul, quick question on that. That $118,000, is that incremental to current operating costs?
It's taken from current operating costs and based on current plant flow rates. So I'm not sure if I answered what you were asking.
Is it incremental or?
No, because that's the same cost that we would have with the current system, which doesn't show on here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was not sure
Thank
what incremental meant. Preform monochloramine that I didn't talk about in detail is a lower cost option than UV, a little bit higher operations and maintenance cost. And then the UV estimate, that's not prepared by us, that's done by others, and that's the most recent estimate that we've been provided. It incorporates $250,000 that have already been spent on pilot testing and preliminary design activities, and then it has $6.9 million for the remaining construction or capital costs for implementing UV. And it, based on those estimates done by others, will reduce O&M costs by about $30,000 a year compared to the current system.
But Paul, the one line that doesn't show in here is current approach without modifications, and the capital cost is 0.
Correct. Yep. You don't have to spend anything. That $1.2 million is the most you'd probably identify to spend to try to address some of these complexities if you felt that was appropriate. All right, so this is my last slide, and we're happy to take questions. But a decision like this needs to be, yes, sir.
Before we change, just on this, the operating cost, I know you said it's difficult to estimate the labor component. Mm-hmm. Any orders of magnitude? I mean, is it, I'm kind of presuming that it's, from a labor perspective, there would be greater savings with UV because you're not dealing with the chemicals, and there's less adjustments.
Yeah, so the numbers here include chemicals and energy. Those are the primary components. But you're right, the estimates of labor compared to current, where there'd be probably less hours with UV, you know, is the plant going to have less of an operational staff number of people because they use one of these disinfectants versus another? I don't know that answer. But, you know, an hour a week or a couple hours a week gets hard to quantify, right, when it's It's when it's number of operators that it's more easier, it's more simple to estimate. So that's why we stayed out of that game. But I believe the estimate was $165,000 a year with labor and some replacement of parts for the current approach, and we took some of those elements out because we hadn't developed that estimate. It was by others, and we hadn't had a chance to go through and validate all of that. So a decision like this, you guys have had to contemplate this for a while, and we're providing a second opinion, but we talked about cost, we talked about risk. The part that we don't know as engineers here presenting to you are the values of the community and what's important to spend on versus other competing interests you have on your constituents' dollars. Your current process has consistently met the 2014 ammonia and E. coli standards. The risks of noncompliance are pretty low. They're under 1%. They're on the order of 1 in 100 days based on that existing data set. So we start to look at risk versus cost. UV has the lowest risk and the highest cost. Your existing approach has higher risk, but as the mayor pointed out, either zero costs or lower costs, depending on what you elect to do if you want to try to improve that with some more minor modifications. So with that, we'll be happy to take questions, but it's a decision for you, and hopefully we've given you some information to serve as the basis for thinking.
Questions for Paul or Larry?
I have, with most of the analysis starts with historical data. And I know your firm does a lot of management of wastewater treatment. Is there anything out there from your perspective that would say there's going to be higher volatility of what's coming in on the effluent in being and impacting that than taking the 5 years of data or so that's been part of the analysis?
Yeah, I'm going to invite Larry to jump in too, but you know, we showed the variation in ammonia. It's hard to envision a scenario where you'd have a consistently higher amount of ammonia other than severe drought and less water use could raise that a bit, but you have the processes there to remove that. Bacterial levels, same sort of thing. If you get a more concentrated waste stream, they could go up, but there's already a lot of variability in those levels. So other than more concentrated waste streams, Larry, any other thing? Okay, so that, I mean, that would be the one that we can envision that would kind of tend to raise the concentrations, but you know, I don't think those would have a major impact on performance. You've already had such variability there just regularly.
Words, using the 5 years of data that's been here already has quite a bit of volatility. There's nothing in your nerdy crystal ball that says the future is going to be any more volatile. There just are situations that may cause some of that, but
yeah, just two and a half years of data, and you know, the things that are bigger influences on what a utility such as yourself needs to do are those regulatory changes that I mentioned are out there and could happen at some point in time, but usually those have a time schedule associated with them that provides time to implement a solution that addresses those new regulations. So usually we see those as the bigger, I think that's where the biggest variability is over the next couple decades for wastewater plants.
And then the other question is with regard the installation, just watching technology costs over time, is utilization of newer technology tends to go down. We've already seen some decrease in the UV installation costs that are there. Is there anything to say that that particular technology cost shouldn't follow the usual curve with a decreased cost over time?
Yeah, it's a good question, and UV has been used in the wastewater business for coming up 3 decades, so it's more mature than some, but it's continued to evolve. And it's been, I'll disclose that I'm do a lot of UV work. I'm currently president of the International UV Association, a 500-member organization, but I'll stay out of that. But UV has a growing use in drinking water as well, and that's led to some changes in the wastewater technology. So you're exactly right. I think the technology will continue to evolve. I think we'll see more and more changes. There's a new standard for how you prove the performance of UV systems that was just ratified by the organization I mentioned last month. So that'll have implications on the industry. So we'll see that technology continue to evolve, and likely costs could continue to decrease over time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Bruce?
I won't get real carried away with this, but there's no reason the water technology nerds should have all the fun. Essentially, the other piece of this that you guys are edging up to but not getting over the line on is the financial decision point on this. And so essentially what I did was created a relatively simple financial net present value model. And the decision point in the analysis is actually fairly straightforward. Based upon the substance of what you guys are describing, which is that the vast majority of what we're looking at here says we're pretty much in compliance with the existing system. And you identified $1.2 million of incremental capital expenditures that could enhance the system. And I think when we reviewed it with you folks, that was broken down about three or four elements cost about $600,000, and then the last element cost another $600,000. If you make the assumption that you spend roughly $600,000 today or within the next year, and it delays the expenditure of the $6.9 million for the UV installation, which is the remaining cost, the question ends up being is how far does that have to get delayed into the future for it to be economically attractive to spend the $600,000 today? I assume that we spend the $6.9 million in essentially year 3 from now. I know it'll happen a little bit more incrementally, but for simplicity, I didn't overscience it. The computations I came up with was that results that I came up with suggest that if we spend the $600,000 in year 1 and can defer spending the $6.9 million for 2 years, it's essentially pretty close to a break-even proposition. There's a slight net present value cash flow pickup from making those deferrals. It ignores inflation, but Councilmember Cernanek just mentioned, or you guys just described the fact that cost of technology could be going down instead of up as more implementations. It ignores the relatively small variability in operating expenses. Significantly, if it goes out from 2 to 3 years beyond when we would spend it, if we could defer it 3 years, the net present value really jumps up substantially, almost $350,000. Advantage to deferring it, and that progression continues to go forward. So if you can defer it from year 3 to year 7, it's over $600,000, it's almost $900,000 of the present value of the cash flows being saved by expending a relatively small amount now and deferring the UV implementation later, assuming we're in compliance. And of course, I looked also as well at the $1.2 million, and that actually adds a couple of years. If you did the full-blown $1.2 million, you essentially need to you break even at roughly 7 years out instead of 3 years out. So you have to go out a couple extra years. But the short answer from the financial perspective or the economic perspective on the whole thing is that not doing this project now, we may very well have to do it in the future, and we may want to do it in the future for a variety of reasons, but not doing it now has a significant economic advantage if we can defer it a couple years beyond what we were planning to do as a result of the original proposition. So I wanted to basically share that so people understood, you know, that we looked at the financial side of it as well.
And for clarification, we get a permit every 5 years, or the permit is good for 5 years.
Correct.
It may take longer to get a new permit than a 5-year period of time, but basically the permits are issued for a 5-year period of time. And generally, the discharge limits do not change in between permits.
Correct again.
So the next time that we would see a change would be in 2014, which in theory will get a new permit, or 5 years from 2014.
Yes.
or 5 years for them. So you're really looking at 5-year increments. And as you stated, if they're going to put a new requirement on, then there's generally a compliance period that's built into the permit. So even if the 2014 permit has new requirements, we wouldn't be required to meet that in 2014, most probably.
Correct.
We would have a compliance which would go into effect. So in our current permit, for instance, we have a compliance that's actually 5 years in the future,
That's right.
because we had a 2009 permit and we're not required to meet it until 2014. Second thing is on your risk, you have, for example, that you're calculating a 0.7% ammonia permit compliance based on the historical data against your assumptions, which are actually more stringent than the permit.
Yes.
And if you translated that into how often you would violate that, from your risk calculation, it'd be once in 140 days.
That's right.
But if we actually look at that same time period with the actual measurements on ammonia, they didn't violate it at all over that period of time.
That's right.
So your 0.7 is overstating that.
Yep, that's looking at a more conservative
Yes.
assumption.
But if we were to take the most frequent violation according to your risk analysis, which is more stringent than what's actually happening, it'd be once every 107 days for the E. coli. And if you calculate that with based on what the permit violation would be, which would be $10,000 per day, and if we compare that to the $7 million, $7.2 million we'd be spending now, well, if we just took it for that, just took it once every 107 days, then it would take us about 205 years of permit violations every day before we would get to the amount of money that we would be spending for UV to prevent permit violations.
That sounds like the calculation is probably right.
As long as they're deemed accidental and not intentional.
Yeah.
As
Mayor,
long
could
as
I-
they're
The state may
deemed
take a
accidental.
different.
Could I just interject a couple of things just for people that might be, citizens that might be watching, and then just get some clarification? And for citizens in the audience or even watching on TV, I think it's important to reemphasize the assignment that was given to Larry and Paul. You heard a lot of positive things about ultraviolet.
Yes.
And so they're not in any way discounting the value of that technology. And in fact, Paul talked about he is involved professionally with ultraviolet, so they're not discounting that there's lots of positive things. Their homework assignment, though, that you asked them to do was specifically under the current permit regulations, what was the necessity or the urgency of moving ahead with UV at this point? So I think they've tried to give you a very fair and balanced picture that all things being equal, if you were setting today just planning a plan from scratch, you would probably, the recommendation would probably be UV. That's not what you have. You have a plant that is being operated by a great team. There are some advantages to UV, but that wasn't, it was the specific compliance issue and then this risk factor. I think in the future, in response to Councilman Cernanic's question, that regulatory uncertainty is probably the biggest kind of roll of the dice that's out there. The other thing that I'll just, for people who might be watching, is they said values are specific to your community. People may or may not know that this plant is owned 50% by the city of Inglewood. So we have a partner. Next week, you'll be having breakfast with the Inglewood City Council. There will need to be a dialogue with your partner. They haven't had a chance to digest this yet, but at least the staff, Charlie and myself, think that CH2M Hill and Paul and Larry did a very good job of coming back and very specifically answering the assignment that the council gave them.
I want to just chime in and say really valuable work, and working through it with the subcommittee I think was extremely educational and useful in terms of really understanding the issues at a deep dive level, no pun intended. But it is good work, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is a picky one. On slide 12, can you bring that one up?
Sure.
at least what's numbered 12 on our page. So would you tell again what you said about the two little triangles that are down below the first spike?
Sure. The red triangles at the bottom there represent what the lab, they collect a sample out in the field and they bring it to the lab and they measure the ammonia concentration of the water at that time. You need to compare them to then the purple triangles up above. Those purple, or not purple triangles, purple crosses, those are the online ammonia analyzers. So they're measuring constantly the ammonia in the water that's going by. So you can see that they're significantly different. The lab is measuring down here about 0.8 milligrams per liter, and the online analyzers are measuring up around 3 milligrams per liter. So there's a discrepancy between those two, and that caused a control problem with the computer system. So the computer system thinks it has plenty of ammonia, when in reality it doesn't. So that messes up the control system. That led to the disinfection problem.
Well, so any place that we see the red triangle close to the purple is good.
Yes.
The little
Crosses,
crosshatches,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out though that it looks to me like there's several other places it's not all that close.
Well, I mean, you're probably looking here like May 24th, May 26th. This is probably within the accuracy of the analyzers. These online analyzers are not perfect. There's issues that impact them. They can foul. You can have, various other parameters in the water that affect the accuracy, and they're not calibrated.
And the one particularly around the 26th, 7th somewhere
Yep.
has that spike also of the E. coli.
That's right. So you can see here the red triangle's low, the purple crosses are up high. So there's a significant variation, and that's why we think the E. coli spiked up there again.
Now, I know this sounds silly, and I'm smarter than this question's going to sound, or even what I already asked, but how would you really know that any of these are correct?
You do regular calibrations of these analyzers, and the plant actually does an excellent job. They maintain these analyzers, and they bring a standard out, and they check the accuracy of that solution and what it's measuring and compare it against what the analyzer is saying. So they know what the sample should be reading, and they compare it to what the analyzer is saying, and they do that on a regular basis.
Okay, now, someone had sort of explained this to me a year or two ago, but I thought I better make sure my memory of this is correct. So anyway, thank you so much.
Sure.
And I'd like to reiterate some of the stuff that Jim said. If we were building a plant from scratch, we would probably think that UV was the proper and appropriate disinfection system to put in. Unfortunately, we're not at that spot. If we were even contemplating spending money to convert from gaseous chlorine to liquid chlorine, we might consider ultraviolet as an appropriate alternative to that, because then we'd be comparing the cost of ultraviolet versus the cost of the conversion. But we've already done that some years ago. So what we're really looking at is the cost of ultraviolet versus nothing. And I don't think that our community has any less emphatic desire to not violate permit regulations or pollute the river than Englewood does. I think we're all committed to having clean water. However, that's not really the question, because the plant already has violations. It already does permit violations of varying degrees of severity and has over the years. And if we put in an ultraviolet system, there's no guarantee that it would not have violations in the future. So it really comes down to how much money are we willing to pay to fix a problem that apparently doesn't exist currently based on what the analysis is of the historical data. Will it operate that way in the future? Don't know. But all we can do is base it on how we've been operating in the past, which is the data that you took, the 2.5 years worth of data that you took to do. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. All right, that was just scheduled public appearances. What we have now is unscheduled public appearances, which is an opportunity for anyone to come down and address us about issues important to the community or themselves, ask questions, comment on policies. We ask that you limit yourself to about 4 minutes. Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am. Come on down. And please state your name and address so we can put it in the minutes.
My name is Judy Cummings. My address is 1750 West Crestline Drive, Littleton, Colorado. I'm here about a procedure that your building department has that I think should change. I have a permit from them. I got a refund on part of that permit cost. I paid for that building permit myself, and yet when they gave me the refund, they sent it to the name of a contractor that was listed on my permit. He cashed that check, and now I'm having to take him to court to get that money back from him. He has admitted that it was my money because he paid me part of that money, but now he says, no, that that's not true, that my name was not on the check, wasn't mentioned, my permit number was not mentioned on that refund check. I think there needs to be a change in the policy on how those refunds need to be made. If that check is made out to the City of Littleton in the private person's name, that's where the refund should go. If it's not going to go back to the person that wrote the check, then there should be something on that stub or on the check that states what the permit number is or who the person is that it was taking out the permit. Now I'm out my $500 more, plus I have to take him to court, which I'm sure I will never get my money back. Even getting a judgment and placing that on his property, I'll probably never see that money. And I think it all comes down to a problem with the building department's method of sending out that refund.
Do you have a copy of your check that you used to pay for that?
I don't have a copy of the check, but I do have a copy of my bank statement. I also have a copy of the permit that shows that my check number was what was written. I also have a copy of the check that the city sent to him and a copy of the stub that was also sent to him, which broke down the refund into different sections. And based on my conference with the City of Littleton, it's the different types of charges that are added on to make the permit cost. But my name was not on that check stub or on the check, nor was my permit number. So if he had not already admitted by paying me back part of that money, I really don't have a leg to stand on getting that money back from him, which I'm not going to get back anyway. But
why don't you send us the information that you have, the copy of the bank statement and the check number and the permit that shows the check number, and we'll see what we can do. But you bring up a good point. This is the first time I've heard a complaint about it, so hopefully this doesn't happen very often.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, typically then we'll ask, this is the first time in at least for a couple of years that I've heard any kind of complaint about the refund system. So we'll put together a background memo from the building department, how many of these have occurred. We'll look at Mrs. Cummins' particular information, but look at the whole system. I'm kind of like you, Mayor. I've not had any complaints, and we've probably done several hundred of these, but we'll go and look and see if there is a flaw in the process.
And these contractors are licensed by the city, so why don't you send us the stuff?
Yes, he is, and that's why I used him for something that I wasn't planning on doing, which I'm sure you guys don't want to get into.
No.
But it was a long, drawn-out affair between me and the building department. But I would like to see a change so that the refund money actually comes to whoever paid for the permit.
Okay, we'll look at that,
All right.
and please send us the information.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am?
Hello, I'm Karen Millspaugh. I live at 9764 South Iris Court, and that's in Trailmark. And I am here to, again, ask the City Council to honor their annexation agreement with us, which states in 9.1 that you provide police, fire, snow removal, and other municipal services generally provided to the city of the association community at a level comparable to those services provided elsewhere in the city. Our concern has always been, I'm the Trailmark president of the HOA. I've been on the Trailmark Metro Board. I've been here before to talk to you about the response times. Our response times out in Trailmark are a lot more than what the city would have here. A lot of times we've been told that you moved out there, you should realize that your response times are going to be more than what it would be in the city. We feel as though this agreement was signed, and we feel as though our response time should be similar. One of the things that you have done in the past is that you've spent some time trying to come up with, I know when we had the Trailmark fire, the condo fire in 2003, there were a lot of people that were upset. There were 8 people who were displaced out of their homes for almost a year because of response times and also because of water, problems as well. And I understand that. We also just had a fire just about 2 weeks ago, and the response time was about 10 to 11 minutes because I know the person who actually called it in and he watched the response time on that. This person is going to be out of their home for probably 4 to 6 months because of the fire in the kitchen and also because of the smoke damage as well. So we're looking at medical response time. We're also looking at fire response time. And those are things that we feel as though we need to have comparable to what Littleton City residents get as well. In 2005, you had a mother who was on the Trailmark HOA who came in and talked to you about the response time for her son, and she felt as though it was around 15 or 16 minutes. She was panicked about the fact that her son was going to be not taken care of. Fortunately, that son is okay, but it's just the idea that we still don't have the response times that we feel as though we need. Now we are told that because of ISO ratings, our particular area in Trailmark will be considered not a 3 as Littleton City would be, but we will be a 9, and it will cost us probably about $600 to $800 in insurance premiums that we will each have to pay. 800 homes will probably have to pay anywhere from $600 to $800 more per year. This has to do with response times, and it also has to do with where the fire stations are. We've always wanted to have a fire station within Trailmark to at least allow the response times to be something that we could actually feel as though we are safe and medically you are responsive to our needs. Those things are things that we are still here asking for, and I've been here probably many times doing the same thing, talking to you about it. But again, it comes down to the integrity of the actual agreement. It comes down to the integrity of saying that if you signed an annexation agreement, you will actually then help us with the response times and get those response times comparable. So if you can do that for us, I know that you've worked on, actually Chief Mullen came up with in 2007, I think it was, he came up with some alternatives. I know you've worked on a medic group that came out of Station 16. Those response times didn't get any better. I know you've also worked on a metro ambulance system, I guess a rural metro ambulance system that actually comes out of or kind of hangs around the King Super Shopping Center up there on Wadsworth. But still our response times are more than those people who are in Littleton proper. So we would like to have you continue to work on that, and we would be more than happy to sit in on some of those things and see what you can do for us, because we still don't feel as though we're getting what we really deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then that brings us to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, which is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County for an open space grant relating to the city ditch. And this is an intergovernmental agreement that we have to sign with Arapahoe County in order to get the $250,000. Pardon? That's what I said. I think $250,000, $250,000.
Did it right, Mayor.
Thank you. A lot of money for Arapahoe County for the city ditch trail that's so dear to Charlie's heart and all of our hearts. The intergovernmental agreement basically says that we will spend the money for what it is that we said we were going to spend the money for, says that we will give Arapahoe County credit for this since this is part of the open space tax that they passed in 2003, says that we'll keep track of the money that we spend and that we'll continue, after we've got the money and built the trail, continue to use it for the purposes that we stated that we would use it for. So may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda item 7A.
Second.
Discussion? It's been moved and seconded to approve council consent agenda item 7A, the intergovernmental agreement. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That brings us to item 8A, which is an ordinance on second reading to approve a lease agreement. If you can read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving a lease agreement between the City of Littleton and Romancing the Bean to operate a concession at the historic Denver and Rio Grande Train Depot located at 5790 South Prince Street, Littleton, Colorado.
Council, Deputy City Manager Phil Cortese will present this item to you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No. This lease agreement has expired, and at this point, staff looked at it, talked to the owners. They had some problems with payments. We've worked out a new lease agreement with them. We're ready to execute it. We're looking at a historic building that has a coffee shop that is pretty limited in the kinds of services. For instance, there is no sewer, so there's no bathrooms. We're pretty fortunate that they've hung on this long, and we'd like to keep the building occupied and to reduce vandalism and keep the site basically secure. And we think the lease agreement, according to the owners today, are pleased with what we negotiated. If council agrees with it, they're ready to move forward. We've actually increased the rent from what it was originally in 2000, and we also know that they had not made some payments, so they're willing to make some improvements to the property, which we did not budget. And so we think it's a good agreement. I hope you think the same. They're here to answer any questions, and so am I.
Questions for Phil? Bruce?
This is just to, I guess, re-clarify. This is all mutually agreed upon. I mean, the
Absolutely.
lessee and and
Yes.
we're all on the same page.
Yes, actually, Tiffany Hooten and myself sat down with the owners and talked back and forth on this and made some changes, and what you have before you is what they agreed to.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, this is a public hearing. We've got two names on the roster, but I think Karen really didn't want to speak about this, did you? Okay. Then the other name is Terry McElhardy.
Terry McElhaney. This will be very brief because I am not a public speaker. My sister and I just wanted to thank the city council, mayor, the city staff for working with us over the last 10 years with the shop. And being Littleton natives, we're very proud to be in the historic depot. A lot of memories for us, as there are for a lot of the Littleton area residents, and we look forward to continuing doing a good job at the station there. So, thank you.
Hey, Terry, I just wanted to ask you, what is your guys' timeline for making the improvements?
I believe the agreement is 60 to 90 days.
Okay, so it's
in the agreement.
Is it?
there,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Thanks. I was trying to find it.
Thank you, Terry. That's the only real name that wanted to speak on the public hearing roster, but if anybody else wants to address us on that issue, now would be the time. All right. How about a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move the ordinance to approve a lease agreement between the City of Littleton and Romancing the Bean to operate a concession at the historic train depot. Be approved on second reading and published in full by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, the Littleton Municipal Courthouse, and the City of Littleton website.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the lease. Discussion? Councilor Peggy.
Debbie.
Debbie.
You do brilliantly with names today.
You.
Well, maybe Phil can answer some of these. Sorry, I didn't ask him earlier, but it says that, I guess my biggest concern is that in May of 2000, we leased it, and it expired in 07, and I don't see a history of the payments at that from 2000 to 2007, but there's been, no rent collected since June of 2005. I guess my concern is that the rent has been reasonably low. There hasn't been any rent collected since 05. Is there a reason there hasn't been any? Was that something we dropped the ball on, or was it just hard for them to be able to make those payments? There was, and above here you say that the 10% of gross receipts would have been an average of $826 a month in rent payments, but there was not even 200 or 400. Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that having someone in that depot is great. I think that Romancing the Bean has been a great business to the community. Terry and his sister are great folks. I'm just concerned about where, I mean, it doesn't look like it's being paid. What are we going to do if it's not paid again?
Sure.
And what about, where's the enforcement on doing these improvements? Are the improvements going to be, because that is our building.
Right.
So who's doing the improvements? Right. Is that something that they're going to do on their own? Are we going to permit? Are we going to approve?
Sure. Good questions. Let's start with the improvements. Dave Stacy and I, since I've been working with our building department, who has ownership of making sure our facilities are kept up in good condition. We've talked to Terry, and Dave and Terry are working together. It's basically, we will get bids on the work that needs to be done, which is, again, redoing the floor, redoing the tile, and some painting. So either Dave and Terry will work together, and Dave could go and get the bids. What we're looking for is that Terry and his sister pay for those bids that we get in. So they're going to work close together. We know it's a historic building. We're not going to do anything that's out of the ordinary. So on the improvements, we're staying on top of it. As far as not collecting any payments, there was, and Terry may have to speak to some of this, but my understanding was Mary Roberts and Chris Gibbons back in 07 tried to look at this lease and try to catch them up, and they just weren't having very good success with the restaurant. So from actually approximately June of 05 through July of 07, they had not made any payments. Then when Mary and Chris got involved, they, from August of 07 through October 09, they increased the payments from 200 to 700 with the idea that they were trying to catch up on some of the payments that were in arrears. But again, in 09, there were some problems with payments, and they weren't able to make the payments at that time. So we have not collected from November 09 to May, well, until recently. What Terry and I talked about was, how is he doing financially? He felt with the $400 that we're going to be charging in rent, and the fact that he's going to be able to put in some of those improvements, that it's not going to be quite dollar for dollar for what they owe us in arrears. But again, we didn't budget for those improvements, and we think that will help his business. And the fact that at this point we're looking to keep them in the building. And you know, I'm not going to tell you that somewhere along the line, did staff drop the ball? You know, could we have foreclosed and told them, look, you know, get out? We tried to work with them. They were having a difficult time. You know, we're hoping this time that doesn't happen. If it does, we're tracking contracts a little bit differently now. We're trying to centralize it between finance and our office. So we hope, from what we heard from Terry, he doesn't feel like his business is doing much better than it has been in the past. And he feels with the reduction in rent, in addition to that, we are also going to make the utility payments where before they were making those. And that's pretty standard. That's the way Dave and I have worked with Town Hall and other buildings. We always make the utility payments, and we look at, you know, efficiencies that can be realized with that. So they've got a lot of relief. And again, our goal is to keep them in that building. But if they can't make the payments, they're going to have to, at this point, we'll have to renegotiate something or, you know, do something different. So I don't know if, Terry, you want to say anything to that?
The payments that we missed earlier in the decade, 2005, and previous to that, we brought it to the attention of the city, and that's when we worked out the new lease agreement, and we were in the process of repaying those payments through the higher rent. And again, we fell behind, and we again brought it to the attention of the city that, you know, we need to fix this. We need to make it right, which is why we worked out the agreement that we would do the improvements in the building to make up for those payments. And I know that in the lease now there's a very strict clause, and I'm sure they'll be watching us very closely regarding if payments are not made, that we'll lose the lease. So.
And I would just add to that, Council, you know, this was an experiment from the get-go. And Terry and his sister have always been very open, as he said. They actually approached, at that time, CD Director Mary Roberts and Chris with their financial difficulties. They're not making a lot of money here. I'd just point to you, we've probably had 3 or 4 vendors in Sophie's Place, at the library, in a public building where you're kind of out of the way. These are not, you know, this is not where a Starbucks would go, and is not a real big money maker. Quite frankly, we've probably saved money by having them in the building and keeping down vandalism over this period of time. So I think there's an honest effort here, Debbie, to kind of settle it up. Things are getting a little better there. And but obviously we cut them some slack, mainly because they were taking care of a historic building for us, and we probably would have had more vandalism in there than whatever we were collecting for rent. And so they've always been very honest and upfront with us, and hopefully things will get better and they'll actually make some money.
Peggy?
You know, I think in addition to keeping the vandalism down, it also is a nice safety issue to actually have people there a good bit of the time. But Terry, if you don't mind, I'll read the clause about the payment that you alluded to. Regarding the lease payments, failure to pay the rental when due shall constitute a breach of the agreement and shall be grounds for termination of the agreement by the city. And that's not, I'm not saying that as a threat, but it's just in here. It's something that sounds like you all have acknowledged that if you can't do it.
Yeah,
we don't.
I mean, we could kick them out. That's easy, you know. I mean, but then it's like, who's going to go in there? Are we going to post a guard? I mean, so, like I said, we've been through 3 or 4 vendors. We've kicked people out of Sophie's Place, and now we've got nobody there. So, it's kind of a two-way street.
Jose?
For those people out there in TV land that just love to watch city council, I would like to read the comparisons that are on the ordinance here. For comparison, the old coffee operation at Bemis Library did charge a basic monthly rent of $100 with 7 to 10% charged on a sliding scale basis for a gross monthly sales in excess of $1,000. 10% was charged when sales exceed $3,250 a month. The coffee shop is no longer in existence. The operator of the Hudson Gardens Coffee House, snack bar along the Mary Carter Greenway, is Solid Grounds Coffee House. Rich Meredith, Hudson Gardens CEO, said the operation of the coffee house snack bar has not been profitable since they took over the operation several years ago. Rich was relieved that Solid Grounds was interested. He has looked for an operator several times over the past few years without success. Not only has Hudson Gardens been unprofitable with sales and direct expenses, they have had significant indirect costs. The lease of terms are simple. Hudson Gardens splits the gross net at the end of the operating season. If there is a loss, Hudson Gardens is not liable. Rich stated that they require property casualty and workers' comp insurance and a valid current Tri-County license. The Town Hall Arts Center building on Main Street is leased to the Littleton City Center for Cultural Arts Foundation, Inc. at no charge, and the city pays all utilities. The monthly bills for the depot average approximately $275 a month. Now, it seems probably to a lot of people, because they have a coffee shop right at the door of the light rail, that this would be an advantageous position. But people are scurrying to get on the train, and they're getting off, and they want to go, and they generally, very few, stop. And I can see where this would be quite a concern as far as the profitability within that small shop. I'm just really happy myself that we've got somebody there that can run it, and at least we have the place is, has a tenant within it. And the other problem we don't have a sewer line over there to the, do we? No, there's no sewer line to that little facility, so actually we should build an outhouse over there for them just outside of the, right down there someplace.
That wouldn't be historically accurate, Jose.
Historic.
Yes. If you don't have a sewer line and you're running a food operation,
We got permission from Tri-County when we first opened. Since we have no direct seating in the area that we lease from the city, we can operate without a restroom.
well, what do you do with your waste, your coffee, your...
Oh, we do have sink sewer system. We do not have
Okay. Okay.
for a restroom. I'd like to add part of the reading that Joseph just did regarding the Hudson Gardens snack bar. We operated that snack bar from 2001 to 2005, I believe, and paid a percentage of sales to Hudson Gardens, made a profit, and Rich decided that they saw our profit and thought they could do the same thing. You saw the results of that. So this is our final stand is at the depot. So.
And you say in this, you say that you attract people from the Art and Design Center, ACC, across the street.
Yes, they come from across the street.
I was surprised to hear that, but you are closer than anybody else to
Right.
them.
And we do have regulars that drive up and get their coffee. So
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Terry.
thank you.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the lease agreement.
This is a public hearing, sir. Did we already ask for?
Yeah,
okay,
I think I already
thank you.
asked. to Romancing the Bean, between the City of Littleton and Romancing the Bean to operate a concession at the historic train depot. Further discussion? Y'all ready to vote?
Was there a motion? The vote is 6 in favor. The motion's approved.
All right, that brings us to item 8B, which is an ordinance on second reading approving a easement on the Byers Biosolids Farm.
Council Public Services Director Charlie Blosson will present this item to you, and Jim Talent from the Bi-City Wastewater Treatment Plant is also here to assist.
And this is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving BP Energy easement on Byers Biosolid Farm.
Council, I ask you to make one change in the ordinance. Discovered an error on line 26 of page 1 under section 2. It addresses it as a conservation easement. It's not. It's a transmission easement. So when you make a motion, and if you decide to approve this, I would ask that you change that from conservation to transmission. And as if you haven't had enough sewer issues for the night, the byproduct of the sewer treatment facility is, one of them is biosolids, otherwise known as sludge. The plant trucks it out to a farm that the two cities own in eastern Colorado near Byers. It's roughly 10,000 acres. And we apply biosolids to the property out there, and it's also used for farming dry land wheat. I'd like to introduce Jim Talent. He is the treatment process manager at the Bi-City Wastewater Treatment Plant. He had an interesting presentation earlier tonight that he was able to view, and he is the one that manages this facility. There are also representatives from BP here if we need to answer any questions from them. So I'll turn it over to Jim Talent at this point to make a quick presentation on this proposal to use part of our land for a transmission easement. Jim?
Thank you, Charlie. Like I said, my name is Jim Talent. I'm the Treatment Division Manager for the Littleton Eagle Wastewater Plant. And about a year ago, I received a request from BP Wind Energy to install power transmission lines across our farm, connecting wind generation facilities in eastern Colorado to an Xcel Energy substation near Deer Trail. I've talked to the farmers that are actively farming that area. They have no problem with the installation of these towers. We'll lose minimal land for farming activities. And I guess the request is if we can work with off-planting construction period so it doesn't impact our farming activities, that would be best for us. Otherwise, I recommend that we proceed with approving this ordinance.
Thank you, Jim. Questions for Jim? Thank you.
Now, Jim, this is not putting up actual wind towers. This is just allowing for an easement of the transmission lines?
Yeah, to install transmission towers just for power lines.
Okay, and are these going to be like the big based ones, or are these going to be single posts?
If I recall, they're double post from what I saw in the original letter, and that's still the case? Oh.
Actually, they'll be steel monopoles. Why don't you come down to the mic so we can pick you up and for the records? And just introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
Sure.
My name is Mark Wingerski. I'm the land manager for BP's wind business. So when we originally approached the cities of Littleton and Englewood about this easement, the plan was to have a H-frame wood structure constructed within that 100-foot easement. Now with the cost of materials, we're looking at a steel monopole embed structure that would go in. So those farmers, those ranchers would be working around one pole as opposed to a set of two.
Thank you. Bruce?
I guess out of curiosity, where's the existing, do you guys have any existing facilities out there that is this just a new line in totality?
Correct. This is a new line. So we have what we're proposing as our Antelope Hills Wind Farm, which is in the greater Flagler area. So this transmission line will allow us to transport the power from that proposed wind farm and ultimately deliver it near Deer Trail at the Excel substation.
Okay, and when you guys do these types of transmission lines, are they always above ground, or do you ever bury them?
That is correct. They're always above ground.
Okay. Okay. And in this agreement, the payment, it says grantee agrees to pay set forth in the fee schedule attached here too, but I don't see a fee schedule. Is there one that I'm missing?
Originally, it was listed as confidential, so we didn't put it in the packet. And then we
okay.
just found out a couple of days ago that it could be released. It is not in the packet. If you wish, we can forward that to council. I believe Jim has a copy of it if you wish to have it read.
Well, I guess the main issue is, I mean, given a choice, it seemed like the one-time payment was going to be better than 15 to 18 years of annual payments. So what are you guys agreeing to in terms of the fee?
Okay, the way the fee schedule is set up, we are paid by BP Energy per mile for the easement, and then a $2,500 cost per pole that's installed as well. The other option, which was an annual fee, was basically that calculation, but paid on an annual basis of about $2,000 to $3,000.
What kind of interest rate? Are we getting an interest rate on that?
It would be escalating at 2.5% per year.
All right, so ultimately the question is, does somebody run the numbers to figure out what the preferred deal is?
Looking at what we could do with the investment, it would be better for us as cities to take the lump sum.
Which makes sense. Okay. Is that what's in the agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got a copy of that here if you'd like one.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to see it, but I don't need to see it now. And I guess the last question, do you guys ever do any deals like these where you reduce the easement payment in exchange for any sort of piece of a royalty on the power at all?
We have not structured the agreement in that way. I mean, traditionally, transmission right away, whether it was, us, BP, Wind Energy, Cummins, y'all, Piesco, Excel, it's generally based on how much line we're ultimately installing, as opposed to how much power we're putting across that line.
I understand. Thanks.
I have a question. Question?
Peggy?
So, initially, there were going to be 2 poles going down?
Initially, yes.
Right, and the fee was per pole?
Per tower.
The poles and the towers are,
Same thing.
The same thing.
right, okay.
The structure itself.
Right, so the tower now, there'll be half as many things to get paid for, to get compensated.
There'll be the same number of support structures for the power lines. There'll be just a single pole as opposed to 2.
Right, but the charge for the poles, towers,
Is per tower.
is per, so if you had 2 poles, where you now have 1 tower.
They're connected together. The 2 poles are connected in an A structure. So
They're a
2
single
poles
unit.
equals 1 tower, is what he was saying.
Okay, but I thought you said they were going to be paying for 1 per pole.
Per tower.
Well, I think he may have said that, but he said that
Well,
because they're
okay, I didn't want
they're
to
at the
lose some money
monopole.
here. I mean, that's a chunk of change.
Oh, yes. No, if I said per pole, pardon me for that, it is per tower structure.
Okay, okay. I didn't want to lose money if money were involved, so thank you.
Deb?
How many miles?
This will be crossing about 2 miles of our farm.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, we need this is a public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
If anyone wishes to come down and address us, there's no names on the roster, but if you'd like to address us on this issue, you can do so now. All right, how about a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move the public hearing be closed and the ordinance approving the easement from BP Wind Energy North America be approved with the adjustment on line 26, changing the word from conservation to transmission.
Did you have the word ordinance in there? line 26 of the ordinance.
Line 26 of the
Second.
ordinance.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance modifying line 26 of page 2 of the ordinance. Modifying line 26 of page 1 of the ordinance, changing conservation to transmission. Discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. This brings us to general business. Council, I think there's a possibility that we may spend a bit of time on the profile for the city manager. I'm going to suggest that we table item 9A until after item 9B and make that as a motion.
Second that.
Okay. Table 9A to after 9B. Bruce. Discussion?
Or Phil.
Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Which brings us to item 9B, which is a update on the ISO fire rating for Trailmark.
Yes, Chief Mullen will, this is an information item for you, and Chief Mullen will present it to you.
Good evening, good council. Last month, I received word from ISO, Insurance Service Office, that we are to be reclassified here in Littleton. ISO is an entity, a company that rates fire departments on the ability to deliver water on a fire. They take into consideration things such as water distribution, personnel assigned to a particular call and their training, the equipment that they're going to be arriving in, and the location of fire stations. I was informed by ISO that the reason for a split classification, that being a 3-9, is due to the fact that there are properties within our fire protection district that are outside 5 road miles from the nearest fire station. In my conversations with representatives from ISO, what I requested and assured that I will be granted, and that is a face-to-face with an ISO representative that will go over our current classification and also remedies for the 3-9. As I believe I stated in the memo that I sent to you, ISO is used by insurance carriers to set rates on fire insurance. In the sampling that I did, and I think I miscalculated, I think what I gave you is a rate increase of 30 to 50% if we are rated a 9 rather than a 3. That's incorrect. It's actually more like 70 to 90% increase on the rates that a homeowner would have to incur with the change from 3 to 9. We are working on alternatives. I will be continuing to meet with ISO as far as remedies, and I will certainly bring that back to council as I discover them. Questions?
Deb?
When was the last ISO rating?
2002, when we reached a 3, improved from a class 4.
So was Trailmark a 3 at that time?
I believe they were. I believe everything that we serviced was classified as a 3 at that time.
So what happened?
I don't know what the trigger was.
Because we didn't move Trailmark.
We did not, nor did we move any of our fire stations.
Outside
Ms.
5
Brinkman,
road miles.
You are asking a very good question, and I think that's why Right now, by phone, we've not been able to get what we think is a very crystal clear answer, and that's why Chief has requested a face-to-face meeting. And so you're asking a very good question. In 2002, there's a technical aspect of a 3 for any particular home or property. If you go online, there's all kinds of criteria. Obviously, like Trailmark's was substantially built out in 2002. So, what happened between 2002 and 2011? We need more clarification exactly what transpired, and then we'll come back to you. But you're asking exactly the right question.
Did you?
Bruce?
Whoops.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Did you say when you're meeting?
I'm sorry.
When are you meeting?
Oh, the
You
meeting
don't
has
know
not
yet?
been scheduled. These are just conversations that I had with an ISO representative and also with her machine and hers with mine. So it was...
We've not been able to set that meeting yet, Dr. Cole.
So, in your letter, you don't tell us, in September. My goodness, so we're coming up fast on September.
That is
We would hope
correct.
they're going to not meet with you in like August 31st.
Which is not, let me, Chief, let me just interject there. It's not our intent to push this back. We were just telling you.
No, I know it's not yours. I'm just wondering what, whether they are going to be giving a timely meeting to the chief.
Oh.
The insurance folks.
Well, we're certain.
That's what we will insist on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
because there are too many people that this is affecting.
That is correct. Bruce?
Yeah, we were sitting here just, the math is obviously compelling. If you take Deb's point, the $700 midpoint of the $600 to $800 times 800 homes on average, you're talking over $500,000 of incremental cost for fire insurance, homeowners insurance for that area. I know this has been a long-standing issue, but from your perspective, and to Ms. Millspaugh's comments, what could be conceptualized as solutions to the response time issue given the distances involved, the 16? And I know you guys have looked at this, but when you've looked at it, what have been some of the conversation points in terms of things that could be considered, given the magnitude of the economic hit that community or that neighborhood's going to take, I should say, potentially take?
As you know, we've tried a couple of different efforts in trying to reduce the response time. One, of course, was the addition of a medic unit. The other one was to talk with rural Metro and have them position a unit closer. Unfortunately, what ISO is targeting isn't response time necessarily. That isn't what they address. That isn't what they measure. They actually measure road miles from a closest station. And as you know, the closest station that we have is over 6 miles to the entrance to Trailmark.
Actually, I understood it was 6 miles to the back of Trailmark.
Actually, it's...
Is it 6 to the entrance?
Actually, it's more than 6 miles to my residence.
I guess you would
on
know,
South
wouldn't you?
Johnson.
Okay, fair
Just
point.
happen to know that one.
Yeah, okay.
So, we believe there are closer fire stations than Littleton. We believe that we may be able to pursue something with West Metro that has a closer station. But as we're doing that, as we're making those talks, we also want to assure ourselves that will mitigate this, that having a automatic aid or some kind of an agreement with a closer fire station will actually take care of the classification of a 9 and hopefully move us back to a 3. But that's what we're pursuing.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry. Go ahead, Chief.
I was going to say that's one of the things that we are pursuing, is trying to rectify the situation.
And we used to have an automatic aid arrangement with West Metro that they, I think, terminated, didn't
Yes,
they?
sir.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's something that the chief and I and Suzanne, because that was a contractual arrangement, depending on what we find out from ISO, that's something that we may want to discuss with you in executive session. Okay. But you're right, because we do have automatic aid with our other adjacent agencies, South Metro and Inglewood. For a variety of reasons, West Metro did terminate. They terminated all of their automatic aid agreements as a fire agency. Mutual aid, as we pointed out, and we've got some background on that. Mutual aid is a statewide agreement. The difference is that in automatic aid, the units are dispatched automatically. In mutual aid, it has to go through a separate discretionary judgment call. We need some clarification from ISO as to what their rating standards were, if in fact West Metro unilaterally terminating that automatic aid agreement had some impact on this. So that's part of the research we're going to do.
Understand.
I will also just point out, and certainly Ms. Millswall has been consistent in her position, but this issue deals with fire calls only. And that's all. This does not deal with medical response. ISO does not concern itself with medical response, and as you know, 70% of our calls are medical. So this is going to be a very, if we can pin it down, hopefully a very clarifying discussion with ISO vis-a-vis this new rating and what the impact of the West Metro agency terminating the automatic aid may have had on that.
And I'm sorry, you may have mentioned it to Peggy, but the timing, your guys' timeline to get it with ISO is?
As soon as possible.
Okay. So
we've expressed a sense of, I think, just because of some traveling,
right?
And as the chief said, but it's not something that we're going to just be casual about. We are asking them for a meeting, as chief said, as soon as possible. We realize this cannot just dangle.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I guess the last thing is just my understanding, and I'm pretty sure this is, I'm very sure this is accurate, but I guess just to say it, the thing that's odd about this, I understand that their mechanism is mileage, but it's interesting because given that 16 is all highway miles from the station to Trailmark, the possibility is reasonably high that they could actually get to Trailmark before the closer West Metro station if it has to go through intersections and so forth and so on. So I know that doesn't enter into their thinking, but I guess I'm curious to know from their perspective why they wouldn't consider that dimension as far as the ratings are concerned.
And I'll certainly ask that question, but I believe there are so many ingredients with response time, and that is the alerting system, the dispatch procedure. There are so many things, and that's why I believe that ISO went to strict road miles.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What are your alternatives for these people?
For Trailmark?
Yes.
We could build
we have some responsibility to them.
That is correct.
And we've never fulfilled it. We tried. It cost us a few dollars, but if it would cost them approximately $560,000 additional in premiums to that neighborhood.
That is correct.
So if it was going to take that much to pay just to keep the mileage from it, it would just be as cheap to buy a firehouse there, buy some land.
We can present those alternatives to you, Mr. Trujillo. It's not, the cost is not buying the house. The cost is staffing it. And as Ms. Millsball said, and before, we've given you those costs before. And so we can offer those alternatives to you as to to have a station there, to have a full fire crew there. And if you're going to have full fire and paramedic, you're probably talking at about $1.2 million a year to staff a station. And we've also looked at the alternatives to the medical care. Obviously, we're going to be talking with West Metro. If it's reestablishing some sort of service agreement with them, that might be satisfactory. But we can certainly bring back a full range of alternatives, as the chief said. If you wanted to put a fire station out there, that has a certain cost investment for the 800 houses that are out there, and I can't remember how many calls a year we make out there. But we can certainly outline those alternatives for you.
Well, we certainly have been remiss in trying to get a solution for those people out there. That's all I'll say.
Well, Councilmember Trujillo, we certainly have this as our highest priority right now. As we've discussed, September is coming here pretty quick.
Yeah.
And we will certainly investigate and discuss with ISO what will mitigate this and present those alternatives to you.
Thank you.
Chief? Do we provide automatic aid to West Metro?
No, we do not.
Okay. The ISO ratings go from 1 to 10, correct?
That is correct.
1 means that you're basically at the fire station.
Perfect.
And 10 means there is no fire service?
That is correct.
So 9 is volunteer?
Or having a station more than 5 road miles. But yes, there are
so
volunteer agencies that enjoy a 9 or an 8. And just to give you a perspective, when I started this business in '74, we were rated a 7. Littleton Fire Rescue was rated a 7 because of the infrastructure improvements, because of training, because of equipment, because of station location. We worked from a 7 during my career to a 3, just to give you the perspective.
So they're deciding to rate Trailmark basically as 1 step above no fire protection, equivalent to volunteer.
If you had no fire protection, you would be rated at 10.
And so they're proposing that Trailmark deserves a 9 because, in their estimation, who knows what their criteria is other than the 5 miles.
And it is the 5 miles. It is the 5 road miles. Without that, if you're outside that 5 road miles, they take, according to our discussion with them, they take nothing else into consideration. Training, or the water supply, or dispatch, nothing.
Or whether the firefighters that are actually within 5 miles are volunteers when it have to arrive at the fire station or not.
Correct.
So it has nothing to do with response times. It has to do with the road miles.
It is road miles that they identify.
Great to be an insurance company, isn't it? Thank you,
Chief,
sir.
I guess one last question. Given the configuration, for example, of Highlands Ranch, and they've got 2 stations as part of the fire partner arrangement, are parts of that community outside the 5-mile radius, hypothetically?
No, sir. There are no areas within Highlands Ranch that are more than 5 road miles from the station.
With their stations or with South Metro, hypothetically, doing an automatic gate?
Just with those 2 stations, they're the 2 1/3 that they have.
Really?
But even with that, we do have automatic aid with South Metro. So even if some of those properties fell outside our 5 miles, they would be within the 5 miles from a South Metro station.
Okay.
And Chief, congratulations, by the way, on the rating going from a 7 to a 3.
Thank you.
But you need to tell me when that is, because I'm going to go back and check my insurance and see if I actually got a reduction in my rate.
I'm sure you did.
Just knowing a little bit about insurance rating, the ISO ratings are not necessarily, they can be a consideration used by the insurance carriers, but they are not obligated to live with those particular items. And particular carriers will look at special areas and not necessarily buy into. So an ISO rating by itself doesn't mean that all carriers are going to treat it, the area the same.
Unfortunately, mine said he would.
Is there sufficient water pressure out there in the lines for the fire?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, there are.
Okay.
The distribution and the water pressure are within the limits, and we got pretty much full credit for water supply.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Council.
Appreciate it. Council, our next item is the former 9A which is now 9B because we switched them around. I'd like to suggest we have some new versions of the draft profile, which which I tried to incorporate changes that had been suggested by different council people. I suggested that we take a 15 or 20-minute break, read the changes, and then come back and continue this item.
Which version?
Let's say at 8:30.
Can we agree on at least a starting version, and maybe Gary can kind of direct us, or someone can direct us?
Just a second.
Because we have one that was provided at our stations in an envelope, one that was provided at our stations not in an envelope, and then the original.
I would suggest that you start from the one in the envelope. Let's try that and see how that goes.
The envelope?
The envelope.
Yes.
The envelope.
Which would be no.
Well, what was the one in the envelope? Because the one that has the color that we got.
Well, the one that we have the color are changes suggested by staff. So what we have is we have the original version that was emailed on Monday. We have a modified version where I took comments from Peggy and Bruce and myself and Jim Taylor and tried to incorporate those into that. That's this version. And we have the changes that the city staff has submitted. From my brief, very cursory review of the city staff's changes, most of those have been already incorporated into here because they were pretty obvious things. So it's the, yes.
9A is
This one?
staff.
Yes.
Without 9A is.
Well, I'll go back and look at each one of you after we, so. For now, let's do 8:35.
Au contraire, you think.
Point of order. Is there going to be one scribe?
Wendy.
It's going to start with an original.
With what?
See what you have. How do we want to proceed? But as an update,
Yeah, I was just going to say, the TV audience, Gary
Gary
Suter with the Mercer
Group
Corporation.
doing the executive recruitment for city manager.
We're back, yes, and this is, as Gary said, he's with the Mercer Group. So what we have is, we have the original version that Gary sent out. We have the staff changes to those, and most of those are grammatical and capitalization issues, and I guess we have to decide how we want to capitalize stuff, or not. Most of the other changes that are in here from the staff have already been caught, things like Smithsonian affiliation and whether we're the only or the first, and the Colorado Convention Center and adding Invesco Field and things like this. If you guys are okay, how about if we go through this page by page and look at from the third version that you don't have?
Yes.
And make changes from that version. Because what I did was take your draft copy and incorporate changes from Bruce and Peggy and Jim Taylor and myself.
Okay.
All right?
You want just give him a copy to,
Do you have one?
I can look off Deb or Joe's.
Okay, yeah, why don't you do that? 'Cause that-
So I can follow?
Yeah. So on page 1, first one that I'm going to suggest is actually Deb's, and that's in the third paragraph. Third line down, change the word downtown to business community.
Business community.
So that would read, Littleton's vibrant business community is largely a product of its nationally recognized economic gardening program. Which actually changes a little bit the orientation of a portion of that paragraph, but it's the smallest number of words to change.
We, as an adjunct, well, how do you want to do this? I was going to maybe embellish that just a smidge more, not wordsmithing, but what I was going to suggest was the economic gardening program, which is a free service, a unique free service provided by the city to local businesses.
Well, what I'm going to suggest, and you can disagree with me, is there's a number of instances where we could describe what we're doing fuller.
Okay.
Or more completely, and we don't, simply because what we're trying to do is just simply convey what it is that the city is like or what the issues are, rather than getting into detail. So if you're okay with
Yeah,
that,
I'm okay with that. That's fine.
But
That's
we could
correct.
also insert links.
Yeah, because
Just
there's
the
a
link to the website on some of those where
That'd be
there's a
fine, too.
specific,
Yeah.
and then it encourages them to go get more information on it.
That's a good
Because
idea.
there's a very good description of it on the website.
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of things that we do that are nationally recognized or we're very proud about, but
You're right, Mr. Mayor. This document's intended to communicate the essence of who you are. The nuances in terms of all the details, and so that'll come out as we go through the process.
yeah,
So-
I mean, for instance, we could have gone into more detail about how the council's elected, but I don't think that that's going to gain anything on a profile.
Am I still scribing or are you scribing now?
You're scribing, and I'm doing this as a motion so we can all decide if that's what we want to do. So the motion is to change downtown from downtown to business community.
Do we have to do motions, or if nobody objects, just go ahead?
All right, let's do this unanimous consent. Is there any objection to changing downtown to business community? Okay, Scribe, you got that.
And there is a
Should we add the website behind program in parens?
yeah,
Sure.
in the line,
It could just be a link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that first, the beginning of that same line, different sentence.
Oh.
The only museum should be First Museum.
Yeah, the states, yeah, on the second line down of that same paragraph, third paragraph, it says states only, it should say states first.
First.
Okay, and Wendy, I want to confirm something, very bottom paragraph, don't we have about 100 citizens on the boards and commissions?
Yes, approximately.
That's what I thought, okay. All right, so that's okay.
Can I add,
Yes, sir.
where do we talk about quote unquote historic downtown Littleton in here?
Well, what Debbie's change does is basically take out any specific talk about historic downtown. We could add that back in.
Well, I like vibrant business community, because I think that's
Yeah.
all inclusive and very accurate, but it's also, it wouldn't be a bad thing, in my opinion, to put some reference to historic downtown Main Street.
Okay.
I don't know,
Well-
know that I care where that goes.
How about in the first sentence, to highlight socially diverse community with a strong Western character, comma, historic downtown community, comma, and high quality of life?
Then we take out the.
Where's that at?
First sentence.
Second line in the entire document.
Or where you mention on the fourth line midway, it is a city. Should we add an A there?
Yeah.
It is
Thank
a
you.
city with many modern amenities, yet also boasting a quaint and economically viable downtown. Perhaps quaint could be changed.
Historic. Yeah, good idea.
That work?
Does that work for you, Bruce?
That's fine, or you could say, instead of downtown, you could actually say economically viable historic downtown Main Street.
Yeah.
And boasting an economically viable historic downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take
Wait,
out the
wait,
quaint.
so what are we changing the quaint to historic, or are we doing something different?
Quaint's gone away. Boasting it should say boasting an economically historical,
Yeah, economically viable historic downtown.
economically viable historic downtown.
That's fine.
Any objections? You're the scribe, make it so, please.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on the first page?
Yeah, in the fourth paragraph, I'd like to include the end of the third line and a higher education complex.
Okay.
That's, so we take.
After Colorado Convention Center,
Yeah, we take out the and after field, comma, so take out that and, the historic, Colorado Convention Center and a higher education complex.
any objections? Okay.
Sort of in that same vein, then after the next, at the end of the next line, I can wait. Got it? After we talk about LPS, do we want to put something in there about ACC?
We have that
Have 'em in
elsewhere
here.
Do we?
in the list of things in that table. Isn't there a table still?
Yeah, next page, it's listed as a top public employer.
All right, cool. All right, that's fine.
Okay, which brings us to page 2. I'm assuming the median household income is accurate. I haven't checked it. Operating budget looks right. Households, which is different than dwelling units, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the census counts, because usually there's a vacancy factor on dwelling.
On dwelling units, so households, okay, that's close enough.
I think, yeah, because I
Yeah.
think the last number I saw, I think total dwelling units was around 18,000.
That's what I was thinking, okay.
Probably consistent with how the census counts.
Yeah, this is close enough.
And I got it off the internet, so it has to be accurate.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
Now, style question. Whoever did the city's version of this does not capitalize city manager, city council,
Or city manager.
yeah, or city itself. Is that the appropriate thing to do?
I think you have an option. When you say city, it can technically take the place of the formal name City of Littleton. When I did an edit on this, I first changed everything back to small letters, then decided that one can have a writer's license to capitalize just to call attention. So, but we should be consistent.
All right, then
It'll be
let's,
consistent throughout, and I know from PR and journalistic professionals that they prefer the small.
all right,
Small,
then,
lowercase.
then as a general statement, why don't you put
Right.
lowercase, uppercase stuff?
Lowercase.
But when I say City of Littleton, it's going to be capped.
Right,
City of
'cause
Littleton,
that's
yes, but when you
official,
say
yeah.
Right.
city or city manager or city managers.
When I say city manager,
or-
it'll be capped because it's a title, correct?
City council, et cetera.
Well,
I
not a,
don't think so. It is when you use Jim's name and, like your city manager, Jim Woods. But if you're just generic city manager,
Yeah.
it would not be.
Okay. So lowercase.
hopefully we're not getting any English savvy city manager applicants.
You can
Yeah.
just go, you can, I mean, I would just follow AP style. Do you just do AP style? What do you do? Do you do AP style?
I prefer the style that Councilmember Cole had first suggested, which is taking the context of the official title and of the official city and doing caps through, and that's just my style. But I realize the AP style is different, and I don't really have a preference on that. It's really your stylistic direction that I'll follow.
What about city council? Are we always cap?
Well, the version here, everything's lowercase. The mayor pro tem, the council.
I think we
I'm
should
fine
do
with
what the
that.
city does, and maybe we need to talk to Kelly, and because I think she's probably got a city style.
Well, that's
that
where my
she
guess this
uses.
came from. So.
Okay. I think we should do what she does.
So let's lowercase all of the positions. And the city, unless there's a specific context where it should be uppercase. Any
Now,
objections?
what the department heads did, and I'm assuming that Kelly has, this incorporates her edits, it has city council capped, but the term council lowercase, so.
Well, some places it's capped and some places it isn't. So
It might just make sense, once this thing gets done, give it to Kelly from that perspective, just in terms of.
Consistency.
Yeah,
let's
grammatical
do that.
consistency.
Have her do the final edit on capitalization and punctuation.
Well, I have punctuated this very, very carefully correcting, so occasionally things need more than one eye, so.
Well, what we'll do is give your version to
Yeah,
Kelly
I've
with
got it.
with the changes that Debbie is doing, and then she
Well, I'm
can.
giving this to Gary so that he can see some of what I did, so that there would be fewer things for somebody to have to change. But then you can
I'm happy to incorporate those.
Yeah, and then you can give it to Kelly, she can see.
All right, page 2. Anything on page 2? Page 3.
Century Tell, is that 2 words or 1 word?
It's actually Century, the edited version has Century Link, and I'll give you those. I did get those numbers from Chris Gibbons, so I have those numbers. If you want to hear them, I can read them to you. Or we can
All right,
move on.
I just took the numbers off, but if you want to put the numbers on, I don't know that they're that big a deal, but if you've got the accurate numbers, then go ahead and put the numbers on.
I do have one clarification. Is Littleton Adventist Hospital private or public?
Private.
It's private, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, page 3. On the graph, where we have city manager, we should take off the lines that go between city manager, municipal judges, and city manager and the city attorney. And then the other question that Jim Taylor had is, doesn't emergency planning report to the
Police.
police chief?
I know, that's what, is that a separate department?
You know, I think it's still listed. Phil, are you back there? I think in the organization chart, it's still listed as a department.
When we did the budget last fall, when we were doing the September piece, I asked about that, and you all said, well, it's a department, but the budget piece is included in the police area.
I mean,
Just for
functionally, it's
simplicity.
included in police because of Commander Beckman taking that up. And actually, now that he's gone, we may actually change it a little bit, so.
But I mean.
You know, for right now, I mean, I don't have a.
But I mean, you did say, I think, then, that it was a separate department. That's what I understood you to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't know that this is critical.
No, I think right now, just leaving it where it is, so that at least they know that that's an important component
Okay.
of the organization. I think
All right.
that's, with Gary, they just need to know that that's important in the organization.
Okay, page 4.
And can staff modify that chart? Because I just sort of copied and pasted it. Do you have a modifiable version that I could drop in there? Or
No, we're saying just stay with
Just
the
keep
way it is.
keep it as is?
But we
No,
we have
those
the two
two
lines.
The lines
that need to
gone?
go off,
Oh,
so-
the two line, I'm sorry, sure.
Thank you, Phil.
If Phil, you taking orders?
Okay, page
Thank you.
4.
I'd like to add to the second bullet,
Okay?
and growth of existing businesses, because that's so much of what economic gardening is about.
Where are you?
Okay.
The second bullet, the end of the second bullet,
Page 4.
add and growth of existing businesses.
This is under community issues.
Yeah. Yeah, right at the end of that.
Redevelop.
Most future growth will come through redevelopment and growth of existing businesses.
Okay, any objection?
But I'm going to, not on that one.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to one item on page 3. The first full paragraph, we talk about water service provided through Denver Water, wastewater treatment in conjunction with Englewood. And I think we should separate that most of Parks and Recreations are provided through South Suburban Park and Recreation District, because it's not, that community center and that is not a function that the city manager.
You're right.
Yeah.
So what we want to add, I think, is the,
If you want to put a link to the South Suburban website, you can.
so in the second paragraph on page 3, the one with the chart, add a sentence that says, Park and Recreation Service is provided through South Suburban Park and Recreation District. Any objections to that? Good point.
Plus a link, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Provided through a contract? Provided by?
Just provided by. Okay, back to page 4. This is Bruce's change on the last bullet.
Well, don't get that down there yet.
The mature?
Let me go bullet, the third bullet.
Okay, you want to do third bullet?
On the third line, I'd like to insert the word careful, the need for careful budget management and choices.
Okay, anybody object to adding careful? All righty. Any other thing? Then we're down at the last bullet. We're going to describe our staff not as aging, but as
Mature.
I was going for experienced, but.
experienced.
Why not just omit that? And I wanted to reword the bullet. Proactive succession planning will likely be required by the next manager as senior staff retire. Because they are senior staff, and mature and senior and aging tend to go together here, but
I think that's fine.
I think that's fine, too.
Well, I'll read that again. A proactive.
proactive succession planning will likely be required by the next manager as senior staff retire.
Well put.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Any objections? Okay. Page 5.
Then we have a style question through the whole rest of this.
Sure.
The he and she or he or she or all that, I suggest we just do the he/she throughout. We just make them consistent.
I'm going to suggest that we turn this over to Kelly and let her make the style decision. Are you
Well,
okay with
whatever,
that?
as long as we
As long
do
as it's
that.
consistent.
I've made all those changes myself, but, then Kelly can do as she wants. in the one version we had, they were in one order and another order.
Yeah, I
and,
know. I know. And I thought I corrected most of that, and I see that I didn't do that, get them all either.
No, it's tough.
All right. Page 6.
I had one other question on issues. I'm not seeing it in here. I must have, during the interviews, lack of housing opportunities came up at least a half a dozen times. I want to make sure that's still in there.
It is.
Or I'm missing it somewhere.
Where is it?
Under community issues.
Third bullet talks about.
The northeast neighborhood.
You're looking at an old
And that's
copy.
an old one.
Yeah.
So the housing opportunities,
You're correct. It's not in here.
it's just a question as to whether City Council wants to draw attention to that or not. But it came up at least a half a dozen times during the interviews, multiple times. And so that's why I said lack of diverse housing opportunities has been identified as an issue. The staff deleted lack of workforce housing.
Well, we deleted that lack of workforce housing, too.
Yeah, okay. But just housing opportunities, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm
Not sure how to characterize that.
Well, we're going to have that's an interesting question. We're going to have a discussion with the housing authority, is it next month?
It's next month, yeah.
And that's one of the specific issues, because the reality is we have everything from subsidized housing to multi-million-dollar homes that appeared in the Parade of Homes. So
Yeah, Polo.
I don't think that we're guilty of lacking a variety of housing.
Okay.
There may be a particular category or price range of housing that some people think we don't have enough of.
Right, okay.
And I have heard that generalized, that we have a lack of variety of housing, but if you actually look at what we have in Littleton, I'm not sure that that's true. There may be that we don't have as many units or a high enough percentage of a particular type of housing as others, but we've got everything from, like I said, subsidized up until Parade of Homes. We have duplexes, we have apartment complexes, we have high-rise retirement places, we've got we've got assisted living facilities,
okay,
nursing homes. So I'd have to say that I'm not sure that I agree with a generalized statement that we're lacking a variety of housing.
Thank you for clarifying that.
But I know that you probably did hear that quite a bit.
Well, you could, one thing I guess if, from a compromise standpoint, if we even need one, if you went to the end of the second bullet after Peggy's point about growth of existing businesses, you could say something along the lines of housing stock issues will also likely be I don't know, I don't say keep saying, use the word issue, but you could just say something along, you could reference something having to do with housing stock as being something that's also going to be on the radar.
Yeah, I just don't know how to word that, because
I mean, there are a lot of issues I think we need to talk through around that. You know.
I don't think we need to get deep. I don't think we need to go.
No, but what I'm saying is that is connected to other things that, depending on the direction council wants to go, current or future, it takes on different shapes or character or nature.
It's sort of implied a little bit by the first bullet. I mean, we don't really talk about, but housing is part of that issue in terms of balancing character and sense of community.
Let's just leave it in there and.
Leave it in there?
I mean, just leave the implication in bullet number 1, just as Councilmember Stallman said. Yeah.
We may
so
surprise
and
you.
move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Page 5.
That's what I was saying. Leave it implied in bullet 1.
Okay. Changes for page 5.
Why did you see me go over the
Easy cap. There's plenty of decaffeinated brands with just as much flavor.
Page 5.
Yeah. 5 and 6. Now, you had some comments in there that I think probably came from your interviews with staff, from the department heads, and I'm hoping that I have incorporated all those into the, what we have here, although they have been rearranged.
Yes, we have incorporated department head input,
Yeah.
city council input, and
Yeah.
community input.
And I'm hoping, I think that all of that is still in here, although some of it was duplicated, and so I attempted to take out the duplicates. And then to group together the things pertaining to relationship to city council, things pertaining to relationship to the citizens and other regional partners, and things pertaining to the city manager and the city staff. Page 6. On the compensation package, it says 148 to 168. I think we should put 146 to 168 based on Eric's calculations. Any objections? And you guys need to add your zip code to your address?
Thank you.
Certainly.
Got it.
Then I suggest in the education experience to do those as bullets, and I have a draft that has 3 bullets that incorporate all of that.
Great.
I just think it's real clean and sharp after they've got through the rest of it, just to have them that way.
It increases readability.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody object to bulletizing education and experience? All right. And I want to point this out to make sure that we're all in agreement. It says here that it's required that the city manager live within Incorporated Littleton. Any objections to that? Bruce?
It's not a vehement objection. I guess, and I think maybe Peggy and I were talking about this, but the certainly, I guess my perspective is to encourage that. But on the other hand, if we happen to get someone who's local, who has a family, has a house, has kids in schools, this kind of stuff, I'd hate to force a relocation if they have no problem commuting. I guess I'd hate to make it a deal breaker.
Well, for me, it is a deal breaker.
Okay.
I feel very strongly that the city manager needs to live within the community that he manages. Okay. For accessibility to the citizens, so that he experiences the same things that the citizens experience. I want him driving on the same roads that the citizens drive on, and going to the same shopping centers and all that stuff. So to me, that's important enough that I would go over to the next candidate.
And I respect that. I guess a question would be then, I mean, if we do happen to get someone local, there may be incremental.
There may be, we may need to talk about
Relo,
but
yeah. But what you're describing outweighs that, so I'm okay with that if everyone else is.
Okay.
I certainly respect what the mayor's saying and believe that myself, having been a city manager. The consequence is you may shrink the applicant pool by applicants that read that and go, oh, there's no room for negotiation. So if you did have someone in the metro area that applied and said, oh, geez, I have to sell my house and move, and it's non-negotiable, they may not apply. If they do apply and they turned out to be a finalist, that could be a negotiated item, and say, okay, we'll put in your contract, you're going to move here within, the next year, 18 months or whatever. So those things can be negotiated. So my point is, I just wanted to bring this to your attention, that by putting it in there as a requirement, it might discourage qualified applicants to apply within the Denver metro area.
Well, I think if we don't put it into an requirement, we may be misleading some people that might potentially apply. Because if that's a deal breaker for them, then you really don't want them going down the path.
And I respect that. I just
Because
wanted to,
it's not a trivial thing to apply for something like this either.
not at all.
For clarity, do you want to say within the city limits as opposed to incorporated Littleton, just given sort of the?
Yeah, let's do city limits.
Okay.
Within the Littleton city limits?
By the way, there's a house for sale down my street.
There's one across from me, too. It's nice.
Yeah.
You going to move?
No, but I'm happy to have the city manager live in it.
To allow for a relocation time, Gary, does it help if we say that the city manager will live within the Littleton city limits rather than?
It is required?
No, it is required that the city manager will live. Just putting a future tense, allowing for someone to have a relocation
Yeah,
timeframe.
any objection to adding will?
City manager will be required to live, rather than the,
No, that's not what Phil's saying.
I know, but it shortens it.
Let's just add will after the,
Yeah.
oops.
It is required
Will
that the
after
city manager will live within the Littleton city limits.
Okay, any objection?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I like
I'm
Peggy's better.
outvoted.
Okay.
But that's
All right, anything else?
And we have a page 7, how is that?
I don't think you have a, do you have a page 7?
I do.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, okay. I don't have a page 7, but are there any changes to page 7? Those of us that have one?
you want to just kill those suggestions at this point, then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Or idle musings instead of suggestions.
Okay.
Gary, no,
I'd suggest we get rid of that exclamation point, too,
Yeah.
What exclamation point?
That's fine.
behind workforce.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else on this? Thank you. So we will give this to you.
Oh, please.
Peggy has some grammatical changes. Then when you get that done, would you please run it by Kelly and have her
You can have that one.
Okay.
proof it one more time and do whatever capitalization is appropriate? And
I will.
he,
Yes.
sheen, or sheheen, or they'n, or however.
Right. I
that
will
works.
incorporate these changes, run it by Kelly, and then send a final to the city council, probably within the next 48 hours. I will be up at CML as well. I did send out an email just giving council members some advice on how to handle potential recruits or and if you'd like, I can give you a few business cards. If you start getting pressure, you can just hand them a business card. And
Actually, that's
say,
probably a good idea, anyway.
well, and I ordered up my sandwich board so I could walk around the conference.
I'm going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where to?
CML?
No, I'm not.
All right, thank you. That brings us to reports. Mr. Current
Thank
City
you, Gary.
Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Just to remind you, council, you do have breakfast scheduled with the Inglewood City Council next Tuesday morning.
Oh, yes, we do.
7:30. It will be down at it's at the Bi-City wastewater treatment plant. And we did, the idea is the plan right now is to have CH2ML make the presentation that you saw tonight, and then to at least give the Inglewood City Council a time to digest that. This is going to be, you guys are pretty much further up the curve than they are, so we expect that they'll have some questions and that kind of thing, and then we'll talk about sort of follow-up where we go for there.
What was the date again, Jim?
It's the 28th.
Okay.
It's next, a week from tonight, Tuesday.
Actually, yeah, a week from this morning, because we also have a council meeting.
And then you have a 6 o'clock start to interview for your Fine Arts Committee. So you have
6 or 5:30?
Well,
I'm sorry.
let's let's rearrange that, because the reason why we were doing that is because we thought we were going to have a meeting on Tuesday evening. We're not having a meeting on Tuesday evening. Do you want to start at 6 or do you want to start at 7?
With interviews?
We have 4 candidates.
Wendy?
We got 5.
Yeah, because my guess is it's easier for the candidates to come at a 7 o'clock meeting than it is at a 5:30 or 6 o'clock meeting.
Oh,
because
okay.
then you have issues with getting off of work and getting home and things like that.
And the last one shouldn't be much past 8:15.
No.
Jim,
You think
for,
that'll be an
the
issue
Tuesday
to the
breakfast
candidates?
meeting, I mentioned this to Charlie. I just want to make sure that this doesn't end up being a debate between 2 consulting organizations either. So,
You know, and I'll talk a little bit. We don't anticipate that. What we're saying is that this was a specific, as we said tonight, a specific work assignment that C2ML was asked to carry out. I think, again, my own judgment is that they were very even-handed in their critique, and that's the way it's. We don't see it being a debate. This was additional information. You are going there as their partner to share this with them, give them an opportunity to see it. They'll probably want to then continue, maybe have their own dialogue, but, it's not a debate. This is a specific set of information that you're now coming back as their partner and sharing with them.
and is the format going to allow for them to caucus if they so choose?
I think what Jim is suggesting is that we terminate the meeting without pressing for a decision on Tuesday morning, so that they.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we don't see it as this is an information sharing, and then we might talk a little bit about timeline. We think from hearing from their staff, they're going to need some time to digest this, perhaps through their next council meeting, and talk about it. And then we'll talk about a joint timeline for a decision on this. So we're not looking for any kind of closure at this meeting. This is to share information with your partners, and so that you're all hearing the same thing.
Will they get a handout beforehand? They'll have something to review?
Actually, yes, ma'am. Charlie actually electronically sent this version over today, and many of them are going to be up at the CML, but it will be distributed in their packets, so they will have had the hard copy before they come to the breakfast on Tuesday.
And Bruce just asked me, and I very confidently gave him my answer, and now I'm 7:30, right?
7:30.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we have met there before at 7, so.
Yeah,
And it's sausage and gravy, right?
Yes, sir. And sludge burgers.
Oh.
All right. The only other thing is I will caution you, for those of you going up to CML, behave yourselves, please. I don't want any calls from the.
That's why Suzanne's going, right? So we're good.
Not till Thursday.
No issues, right?
And I don't have anything
Get out
else.
of jail free card. So did
Welcome back, Jim. We've missed you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm had a little bit of a detour, but feeling good.
Good. Wendy, do you think there's going to be a problem starting at 7? Have you already told them when we're starting, or? No. Okay.
No. I posted it at 6, but we'll repost it, because it's not until next week, but we post early.
Okay.
So I'll repost it at 7 o'clock.
All right. Great. Ms. City Attorney.
I don't have anything.
Jose.
Nothing.
You're the one.
Bruce.
You want to leave early.
I've got motivation because we're driving up tonight too. Two very quick things. The Fine Arts Committee meeting was in fact held on last Thursday. We talked about there's 5 applicants for the openings we're going to interview next week. The art piece affectionately referred to as Pac-Man over at Federal and Bowles was apparently vandalized. And they're talking to the artist to try to come in and get that squared away. The dedication for what's now being called Cobbler's Path, not Cobbler's Bench, over at La Roca Park is going to be July 9th, tentatively. and we had a slideshow presentation of potential locations within various parks around the city that may be next up as far as placement of an art piece is concerned. And tradition demands, nay dictates, that this time we're going to do it in deference to Guys and Dolls. So the famous original permanent floating merchant plug of the week, which, if you're familiar with Guys and Dolls, is in one of the songs. Coincidentally, it's totally, I had not planned this ahead of time, but we're going to go with Romancing the Bean because we need them to make their lease payments. That's all I've got.
Deb.
I don't have any report.
Bill.
A couple of items. The South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce has their real estate breakfast. It's this Thursday morning, and I know that staff has been notified of that. Also, a note for future employment. It's not yet built, but Gordon Holdings is building a thermoplastic manufacturing facility near Centennial Airport, and we'll be employing 200 folks. Hourly wage estimate starts at about $30 an hour, so it's at the higher end. HPB met last night with prep for the clarification on some of the code that's there, and a couple things for Dr. Cog that'll be coming up in the next week before we have a chance, but their MetroVision as well as their area agency on aging looking for some assistance on that. And just to finish a little bit with what's going on at the Buck Center, 9 to 9:30 on the mornings of Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, you can do butts and guts.
Peggy, top that.
I will. First, happy birthday to Debbie, whose birthday is Thursday. We're not having cake tonight. God willing, we'll have it on July 5th. And then second, a serious issue of concern to quite a few folks who live in the Stern Park area. Several of them have been quite upset by all the algae or whatever that came about in part with the flip of the lake, the spring flip of the lake. The heavy rains yesterday took care of all that. Somebody downstream apparently has all that now. But for the future, because the lake needs to be dredged, I already chatted with city manager about this, and he told me that Charlie Blaston has talked to the appropriate folks at South Suburban to get them to put some money into the budget for next year to do the dredging. And we don't know whether or not that might require some city money. But if you're out there still watching, that's being taken care of within the next year. Hooray. Thank you.
Bill. Bruce.
Was that
guy down at the side?
I'm sorry, I forgot one other thing. If I may request, I've been communicating via email with Charlie and Dave Lorenz about citizen input regarding Kettering Park and getting the underbrush cleaned up on the north side as a public safety and health issue. And South Suburban's done this in the past. Every summer they come in and mow some of that stuff down. I just wanted to get that on the list and see if we could follow up to make sure that they get that handled. Thank you.
Okay. Council, we have one of the applicants that cannot be here at next Tuesday. Do you all want to phone interview her? Is there any
She
objection?
actually didn't send me an application.
Oh, really?
But we never really answered her back either.
Okay. Would you call her and see if she would be able to do a phone interview? And
On next Tuesday?
next Tuesday?
Okay.
So she'd have to be available from 7 through, I'm going to guess 8:30 is.
We could do her first.
Well, I usually schedule them.
Okay, so why don't you schedule that? Okay.
Could schedule her first.
And have her send in an application, please.
So will she be, Is she 6 or 5? The
Is
fifth
she
or the
my
sixth?
number?
Is she the 5th or the 6th?
She's 6.
6.
Okay,
Okay, good.
all right.
I guess let me ask you just in that regard, we can talk about this maybe next week, but one of the questions was, given it wouldn't be a bad thing if we had the concept of a couple alternates, given their need for people to actually hang shows and do conservation of the art and so forth and so on, like we've done in others. So I guess maybe I just want to throw on the table, would there be consideration of filling the 2 positions and then potentially up to 2 alternates to get a little bench strength?
I think it says it in the code.
Huh?
I think it specifies each number and the number of alternates in the city code.
We'd have to
I
change.
thought we jacked up the number, didn't we increase the number for like historic preservation at some
We
point?
did, but we did a code change to do that.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
And I had asked someone who's been on that board for a while, a year or so ago, I asked whether or not we should increase the number, and the person said, no, for the reason you're saying, so.
Yeah, I don't know that the number of the board members needs to be increased, but I think the logic that we used for historic preservation and planning to have some people get up to speed on this stuff also applies to fine arts. In particular, given that they seem to, we keep telling the applicants their expectation is they're going to work on hanging and taking down shows at the museum and conserving the art around the community, and that has traditionally been challenging for a lot of people to pitch in on. So
Why don't you ask the board?
I talked to Jim Dixon about it, and I don't think there's
Well, why
any.
don't you ask the whole board?
Say it again.
Ask the whole board. Ask at a board meeting, bring the question up.
Okay, I can certainly do that. We're not going to meet again until July, end of July, though.
Frankly,
Well, we could not appoint them next week anyway, or we couldn't appoint them at the next regular meeting after we do the interviews because we'd have to do a code change to do that. So
It specifically says in the code, the committee shall consist of 11 members.
yeah,
We'd have to do an ordinance to change the code,
so
to add
we
alternates.
what we need is 11 members who will contribute to that committee. If we do not have 11 members on that committee who are currently contributing to the level that they need to be able to make it a functional committee, then that's a committee issue. That's not a council issue. There's 11 people, there will be 11 people on that committee. If they keep coming up shorthanded on work,
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, then that's part of our interview question, to make sure.
that's always been part of our interview question, and I think we're going to have to get deadly serious about it.
Okay. Anything else? Then we're adjourned.